My name is Mia, I'm in my 50s, living alone since my husband passed away from a heart attack a few years ago. My son, Mason, got married and moved out. While I don't want him to live with me, I do feel lonely sometimes. Part of the reason I didn't want him to stay was because I've seen how difficult relationships between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law can be. My own mother was harassed, and it made me cautious. I wasn't very close to my grandmother either, so I understand family conflicts well. To be honest, I don't get along with Mason's wife, Emily. She often speaks in a way that feels superior, and I felt we weren't a good match. Here's what happened the first time I met her. During a family meeting, Mason introduced her. "This is my fiancée, Emily. Isn't she beautiful, Mom?" he said. "Nice to meet you, Emily," I replied politely. "I'm glad Mason is getting married. Let's have coffee and chat." Emily smiled and said, "Thank you," as I offered some snacks. I brought out a cheesecake I'd made. "Did you make this, Mia?" Emily asked. "Yes, it's my signature cheesecake. I hope you like it," I replied. Emily took a bite and frowned. "Handmade sweets seem so poor," she said. Then, she laughed. Mason joined in, saying, "Mom loves making everything by hand. It's kind of funny." I was stunned. I'd always loved baking and had fed Mason homemade food when he was young. Had he always thought this way? Emily even spit out the cheesecake she'd tasted and laughed again. It was hurtful and rude. Emily, according to Mason, comes from a good family, but her words and actions are often unpleasant. Since their wedding, she always makes sarcastic remarks whenever we meet, which is exhausting. I also don't get along with her parents. Emily's mother, Elizabeth, looks down on me for working at my age. She once said, "It must be tough still working in your 50s. I guess you're not getting much survivor benefits since your husband passed away." I tried to keep calm and responded, "I enjoy working." Elizabeth smirked and continued, "Women are happiest when they're housewives. Working mothers like you probably couldn't give Mason much love." I replied, "That's not true. I loved Mason dearly." But she dismissed me, saying, "Working mothers always cut corners." I'm glad Emily is a proper housewife now. Women should quit their jobs and focus on the household. Elizabeth, though the same age as me, has very old-fashioned views. It's not wrong to be a housewife, but the way she judges others' lifestyles as if she's an expert is annoying. Her husband, Logan, also acts like he's above everyone else, being the president of a mid-sized company. Overall, dealing with Emily and her family has been a tiring experience. I wish Elizabeth would just mind her own business. Somehow, I ended up agreeing to go on a trip with Emily's annoying parents, which has left me confused. It's the year-end holidays, and I had some time off work. Out of the blue, Elizabeth called and invited me on the trip. To make it more awkward, they had already booked a luxury hotel and airline tickets, so I felt like I had no choice but to go along with it. On the day of the trip, I arrived at the airport terminal just before the scheduled 10 a.m. meeting time. Soon, Mason, Emily, Logan, and Elizabeth arrived, carrying large bags. "Thank you for inviting me," I said. "I feel a bit guilty, though." Elizabeth waved it off. "Oh, don't mention it. Let's board. Here are the tickets we bought in advance." She handed tickets to everyone, except me. "Oh, sorry, Mia," she said casually. "I forgot to buy your airplane ticket. You'll have to get there by boat. It'll take 10 hours. "What?" I exclaimed, shocked. Emily laughed. "Mom, making Mia take a boat is hilarious. It suits her." Mason added, "We'll wait for you in Los Angeles." I was stunned. "Are you guys really okay with this? You're just leaving me behind?" Elizabeth shrugged. "We won't have any issues. Just remember, if your back hurts from the boat ride, that's not our problem. See you there." As they walked through the gate laughing, I stood there alone, gripping my phone in anger. Why did I have to endure such cruelty? I'd hoped this trip would be a chance to get along better with everyone, but instead, I was being treated like a fool. No, the truth is, I'd been foolish to believe they had good intentions in the first place. I realized Logan and Elizabeth must have planned to bully and exclude me from the beginning. I was furious and thought, I won't let this slide. I'll get back at them and make sure they can't retaliate. Muttering to myself, I must have looked like an angry old lady as I walked home, my face tight with frustration. When I got home, I put my phone aside, quickly finished some work, and took a short nap. After I woke up, I noticed my phone was flooded with WhatsApp notifications. Curious, I checked, and all the messages were from Elizabeth. I'd turned off notifications while sleeping, so I hadn't noticed them earlier. When I called her back, Elizabeth answered, furious. How dare you do that to me, she yelled. What are you talking about? I replied. Don't act innocent. You uploaded that conversation online, didn't you? Oh, you mean the short video? Yeah, it's going viral. It's even trending on major forums now, I said calmly. What did you just say? Elizabeth was outraged. There's even a thread calling me the evil witch aunt, and it's already up to part 10. Where do they get off calling me that? I'm a classy and refined lady. You didn't realize you were mean? That's the real issue here, I said flatly. Elizabeth continued her rant. Thanks to you, I've been bombarded with messages from friends who saw that video. It's ruining my vacation. Oh, is that so? I replied, feigning concern. But let's be clear, the one at fault here is you, Elizabeth. I just uploaded the audio. And no, it wasn't illegal or anything. Elizabeth was furious. You're the real evil witch. You're just jealous, because you're not as wealthy as I am. You envy everything about me, don't you? I kept calm. Actually, I'm not envious at all. But Elizabeth, you're the one being deceived by Logan. She paused, shocked. What do you mean? She demanded. My late husband cherished me deeply, but Logan? He has someone more important to him than you. What are you talking about? His affair partner, I said bluntly. What? Elizabeth's voice wavered. The real reason for this trip was so Logan could secretly meet a woman there, I explained. Elizabeth was speechless. I knew about Logan's affair because the woman had posted videos with him on a site I often browse. She appeared to be in her late 20s, not much older than their daughter, Emily. It was disturbing to see such a relationship. While I couldn't post explicit details online, the linked blog painted a clear picture. It was full of entries describing their time together, explicitly and shamelessly. I sent the blog link to Elizabeth. Go ahead, read it, I said. Elizabeth opened the link, and soon I could hear her screaming in horror. It was almost unbearable. Apparently, Logan had told her he was taking a short walk, but instead, he'd gone to meet the woman. While Elizabeth was still on the phone with me, Logan returned to the hotel room. Oh, what a lovely view I just saw on my walk, Logan said casually. Elizabeth snapped. Where were you? Were you really just walking alone? Yes, of course. Did you want to come next time? Logan said nervously. Don't lie to me. What's this diary I'm reading? You were with the woman who wrote it, weren't you? Well, Logan stammered. Explain yourself, Elizabeth shouted. Why is your affair partner here? Look, it's not what it seems. I met her during a business trip. We had drinks, and we got friendly, but it's nothing serious. Logan tried to defend himself. Nothing serious? This diary says otherwise. You're disgusting, Elizabeth yelled. Then Logan blurted out something shocking. Well, Mason did the same thing. Wait, what? Elizabeth froze. Logan suddenly spilled the beans. Mason was at the bar with me, drinking and flirting with women. After that, we both went to that kind of place. Elizabeth was shocked. What did you just say, Mason? What does this mean? Emily turned to Mason, furious. Is this true? Mason tried to defend himself. Emily, calm down. I didn't do anything. I was just drinking with a woman. That's all. Logan smirked. Oh no, if I'm going down, I'm taking you with me. Mason panicked. Why are you dragging me into this? I'm your son-in-law. Defend me. Logan shot back. Shut up. This is all your mother's fault. Emily was devastated. Mason, I thought we were happy, and now I find out you've been lying to me? It turned out Logan and Mason's companies had a business relationship, so they often spent time together. However, their business trips were more than they seemed. During one trip, both companies had run into trouble and had to apologize to a client. Conveniently, the client was located in the same area as their vacation spot. After handling the apology, Logan and Mason decided to drink, flirt with women, and have secret relationships. This wasn't a one-time thing, they'd been visiting privately multiple times. Emily's voice shook with anger. So when you two said you were surfing and snorkeling together, that was a lie? Mason looked cornered. Well, what about the mountain climbing? Emily pressed. That was a lie too, Mason admitted. Emily exploded. This is too much. I can't believe this. Mason tried to shift the blame. See, I didn't do anything worse than Logan. Logan laughed. Oh, Mason, we both know what you've done. Don't make me spill all the details. Mason begged. Please don't say anything more. I was shocked. Mason wasn't just my son-in-law, but someone Logan seemed to admire. To think they'd both been going there repeatedly to meet women disgusted me. Even this supposed family vacation to Los Angeles was just a cover to meet their mistresses. The thought made me sick. Realizing how much of a fool I'd been for trusting these people, I felt pathetic, but before I could process it further, Elizabeth started yelling on the phone again. "This mess is your fault, Mia. Apologize." "No," I replied firmly, "I won't apologize." Elizabeth was furious. "You're just jealous, because you're poor. You're trying to ruin my family. You're a demon." I snapped back. "If anyone's a demon, it's you, Elizabeth. Haven't you been flirting with a young man yourself?" Elizabeth faltered. "What? That's ridiculous. One of your employees told me you approached him and," I trailed off, letting her panic set in. Elizabeth was shocked when I revealed the truth. "Wait, your company's employee? What do you mean?" she stammered. "Yes," I replied calmly, "I'm the CEO of XX Foods. You may have thought I was just a part-timer, but I actually run the place." Elizabeth gasped. "The famous XX Foods? You're the CEO?" "Yes, I worked my way up and now lead the company. I'm far from struggling, and I certainly don't envy you, especially not after what you did to one of my employees." Elizabeth's face turned pale. "I didn't do anything wrong." I crossed my arms. "Really? You approached him while he was cleaning the entrance and made him deeply uncomfortable. He told me what you did, and frankly, it was completely inappropriate." Elizabeth began to panic. "Oh no. I'll apologize, please. I swear it won't happen again." "It's not up to me to forgive you," I said coldly. "That's up to my employee." Elizabeth had been harassing Alexander, a young man on cleaning duty at my company. She would show up every Monday when he was scheduled and behave inappropriately toward him. Alexander didn't know how to respond since she was an older woman and feared any reaction might backfire. The stress eventually took a toll on him, and he went on leave. When Alexander emailed me photos and explained the situation, I was furious. I decided to act. With Alexander's consent, I forwarded his photos and story to Logan via WhatsApp. Chaos erupted. Logan shouted at Elizabeth, "What were you thinking, going after a younger man? You're a disgrace." Elizabeth tried to deflect. "It wasn't just me, he had a part in it too." Logan didn't buy it. "Stop lying, you're nothing but a creepy old stalker." But Elizabeth fired back. "Oh, you're one to talk. You've been having an affair too, and don't forget, you owe me hundreds of thousands in alimony." Logan smirked. "You're not getting a dime from me. I don't need you either." Elizabeth snapped. "Wait, Emily, don't call me that," Logan growled, cutting her off. What followed was a massive argument at the luxury hotel in Los Angeles. Eventually, Logan and Elizabeth divorced. Logan had been unfaithful, so Elizabeth received alimony. However, she didn't get to keep it for long. Alexander sued her for harassment and won damages, which essentially meant Elizabeth had to use her alimony to pay him. Later, Elizabeth came to me, asking for a job. "Please, I need work," she pleaded. I refused. "I don't need someone like you causing trouble." As for my family, my son divorced Emily after it came to light she was pregnant, but not with his child. Their relationship was a mess, and my son's actions disappointed me deeply. I wondered where I went wrong raising him, but I reminded myself he was an adult and responsible for his own choices. Now that I've had my revenge, I'm ready to focus entirely on my work as a CEO. The future is mine to shape.
The sound of shattering glass jolted me from my daydream. I rushed to the kitchen, my heart pounding, to find Mason standing over a broken vase, his face contorted with anger. "Damn it, Evelyn. Why do you always leave things where I can knock them over?" He snapped, glaring at me as if I deliberately set a trap for him. I bit back a retort. This wasn't the Mason I'd married 5 years ago. That Mason would have apologized, helped clean up, maybe even laughed about his clumsiness. This new version, well, I hardly recognized him anymore. "I'm sorry, honey," I said, kneeling to pick up the larger pieces. "I'll be more careful next time." Mason grunted and stormed out of the kitchen. I heard the front door slam a moment later. So much for our quiet Sunday afternoon together. As I swept up the remaining shards, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my sister-in-law, Penelope. "Hey, sis. Lunch tomorrow?" "Have some juicy gossip to share." I hesitated before replying. Penelope had always been a bit of a troublemaker, but lately she'd been hinting at knowing something about Mason, something she claimed I needed to hear. "Sure," I texted back. "The usual place at noon." Her response was immediate. "Perfect. You won't believe what I've found out." I sighed, tossing the last of the broken vase into the trash. What had happened to my picture-perfect life? Just 2 years ago, Mason and I were the couple everyone envied. Now I felt like I was walking on eggshells in my own home. The next day I arrived at the cafe early, my stomach in knots. Penelope breezed in, her designer sunglasses perched atop her perfectly coiffed hair. "Evelyn, darling," she exclaimed, air-kissing my cheeks. "You look exhausted. Is my brother keeping you up all night?" She winked suggestively. I forced a laugh. "Oh, just busy with work and house stuff." Penelope's smile faltered for a moment. "About that, Evelyn, there's something you should know about Mason." My heart raced. "What is it?" She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I overheard Mom and Dad talking. Apparently, Mason's been seeing a therapist for months. They mentioned something about anger issues and family history." I blinked, stunned. "What? He never told me anything about therapy." Penelope nodded sympathetically. "I know. It's shocking, but there's more. They said something about Mason's father. The one who left when Mason was little?" I nodded, my mind whirling. "Well," Penelope continued, "apparently he didn't just leave. He was abusive, to both Mason's mom and Mason himself." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Mason had always been vague about his father, but this was beyond anything I'd imagined. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Penelope reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "I'm so sorry, Evelyn. I thought you deserved to know." I sat back, my lunch forgotten. Suddenly, Mason's mood swings, his increasing irritability, even the incident with the vase, it all took on a new, terrifying context. As I drove home that afternoon, my mind raced with questions. Why hadn't Mason told me about his therapy, about his father? And most importantly, what did this mean for our future, for our marriage? I pulled into our driveway, steeling myself for whatever mood I might find Mason in, but as I reached for the door handle, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from a number I didn't recognize. "Evelyn, we need to talk. It's about Mason. Meet me at Riverside Park tomorrow at 3 p.m. Come alone." I stared at the message, a chill running down my spine. Who was N? And what else could they possibly tell me about my husband that I didn't already know? With a deep breath, I stepped out of the car, ready to face whatever awaited me inside. But one thing was certain. My perfect life was unraveling fast, and I had no idea how to stop it. I paced the living room, my mind racing with the mysterious text message. Who was N, and what did they know about Mason? The sound of his key in the lock made me jump. "Evelyn, you home?" Mason called out, his voice oddly cheerful. I plastered on a smile as he entered. "In here, honey?" He strode in, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in weeks. "Hey, I was thinking we could order in tonight. Chinese, maybe?" I blinked, caught off guard by his sudden shift in mood. "Sure, that sounds nice." As Mason called in our order, I watched him carefully. Was this the same man who'd exploded over a broken vase just yesterday? The same one hiding a traumatic past and secret therapy sessions? Over dinner, Mason chatted about work, laughing at his own jokes. I nodded along, my stomach churning with each bite. When he reached for my hand across the table, I nearly flinched. "You okay, babe?" he asked, his brow furrowing. "You seem off." I forced another smile. "Just tired, long day at work." He nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Well, why don't you turn in early? I'll clean up." As I lay in bed that night, listening to Mason move around downstairs, I made a decision. I had to meet this mysterious N. I needed answers. The next day I arrived at Riverside Park 10 minutes early, my heart pounding. A woman with sleek black hair approached, her eyes darting nervously. "Evelyn?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "You must be N." "Natalie," she corrected, sitting beside me on the bench. "I work with Mason." My blood ran cold. "You work with him?" Natalie's eyes filled with tears. "Evelyn, I'm so sorry. I didn't know he was married at first. By the time I found out, things had already progressed." The world spun around me. "You're having an affair with my husband?" She nodded miserably. "It ended last week. I told him I couldn't do it anymore. But Evelyn, there's something else you need to know." Before she could continue, my phone rang. It was Mason. "Hey, where are you?" he asked, his voice tight with tension. "I came home early to surprise you, but you're not here." I swallowed hard. "I'm just running some errands. I'll be home soon." "Hurry back," he said, an edge to his voice that sent chills down my spine. "We need to talk." I hung up, my hands shaking. Natalie watched me with wide eyes. "Evelyn," she said urgently, "Mason has a temper. I've seen it at work. He scared me sometimes. Please, be careful." I stood up, my legs unsteady. "I have to go." "Wait," Natalie called after me. "There's more you need to know." But I was already walking away, my mind reeling. My Mason had been unfaithful, and now this woman was warning me about his temper. It was too much to process. As I drove home, a new text came through. It was from Penelope. "Evelyn, call me ASAP. It's about Mason. It's worse than we thought." I pulled over, my hands trembling as I dialed her number. "Evelyn?" Penelope answered on the first ring. Thank God. "Listen, I found out more about Mason's father. The abuse, it wasn't just physical. There were other things, terrible things. And Mason, he might have inherited more than just anger issues." My blood ran cold. "What are you saying, Penelope?" "I'm saying be careful, Evelyn. Very, very careful. And whatever you do, don't confront him alone." As I hung up, a wave of nausea washed over me. The man I'd married, the father of my future child, was suddenly a stranger to me. A potentially dangerous stranger. With shaking hands, I restarted the car. Mason was waiting for me at home, and for the first time in our marriage, I was terrified of what I might find when I got there. The piercing wail of a newborn jolted me awake. I stumbled out of bed, my body aching from the recent delivery. Lily's cries echoed through the nursery as I scooped her into my arms. "Shh, baby girl," I cooed, rocking her gently. "Mommy's here." As Lily's cries subsided, I glanced at the clock. 3:15 a.m. Mason should have been home hours ago. I settled into the rocking chair, Lily nestled against my chest. The past 9 months had been a roller coaster. After that terrifying night, when I'd returned home to find Mason in a rage, hurling accusations about my sneaking around, I'd told him about the pregnancy. The news had stopped him cold, transforming his anger into shocked silence. For a while, things had improved. Mason had been attentive, even loving, as my belly grew. But as the due date approached, his old patterns resurfaced. Late nights at the office, mysterious phone calls, that simmering anger just beneath the surface. The sound of the front door opening snapped me back to the present. Heavy footsteps stumbled up the stairs. "Evelyn?" Mason's voice slurred. "Where are you?" I tensed, holding Lily closer. "In the nursery," I called softly. Mason appeared in the doorway, his tie askew, eyes bloodshot. "Why are you up?" "Lily was hungry," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Where have you been, Mason?" "It's after 3 a.m. He waved a dismissive hand. "Work thing. Ran late." The lie hung heavy between us. I could smell the whiskey on his breath from across the room. "Mason," I started, but he cut me off. "I'm going to bed," he mumbled, turning away. "Don't wait up." As his footsteps faded, I felt a tear slide down my cheek. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. Lily deserved better. We both did. The next few weeks passed in a blur of sleepless nights and tense silences. Mason threw himself into work, leaving before dawn and returning long after Lily and I were asleep. On the rare occasions he was home, his temper flared at the slightest provocation. One afternoon, as I was folding laundry with Lily napping nearby, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Natalie. "We need to talk. It's about Mason. Please meet me." My heart raced. I hadn't spoken to Natalie since that day in the park. What more could she possibly have to tell me? Before I could respond, I heard Mason's car in the driveway. Panic surged through me as I quickly deleted the message. Mason burst through the door, his face flushed with anger. "Why the hell is your sister-in-law calling me, asking if I'm in therapy?" I froze, the laundry forgotten. "Mason, He advanced on me, his voice rising. "Have you been talking to Penelope about our private life? Spreading lies about me?" "They're not lies," I whispered, backing away. "I know about your father, Mason, about the abuse." His face contorted with rage. "You don't know anything," he roared, slamming his fist into the wall beside my head. Lily's startled cries filled the air. I ducked under Mason's arm, racing to scoop her up. "Don't you dare walk away from me," Mason shouted, following me into the nursery. I clutched Lily to my chest, my voice shaking. "Mason, please, you're scaring her, you're scaring me." For a moment, something like shame flickered across his face, then his expression hardened. "I'm going out," he growled. "Don't wait up." As the front door slammed, I sank to the floor, Lily wailing in my arms. This couldn't go on. I had to protect my daughter. I had to protect myself. With trembling fingers, I pulled out my phone and dialed my mother's number. "Mom?" I choked out as soon as she answered. I need help. Can Lily and I come stay with you for a while? As I listened to my mother's concerned voice, a steely resolve settled over me. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of my fight for a better life, for both Lily and myself. The gentle cooing of Lily in her playpen was the only sound breaking the tense silence of our home. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the clock. 9:30 p.m. Mason was late. Again. My phone buzzed with a text from Penelope. How are you holding up? Any word from Mason? I sighed, typing back, nothing. He's been gone more than he's home these days. The past few months had been a blur of sleepless nights and lonely days. Mason's absences had become so frequent that I'd started to feel like a single parent. The rare times he was home, the air crackled with unspoken tension. The sound of a key in the lock made me jump. Mason stumbled in, his tie askew and eyes bloodshot. Where have you been? I asked, trying to keep my voice level. He waved a dismissive hand. Work stuff. You wouldn't understand. The familiar excuse ignited a spark of anger in my chest. I wouldn't understand? Mason, I've been raising our daughter alone while you're out doing God knows what. His eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm not blind, Mason. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the way you barely look at Lily or me anymore. What's going on? For a moment, something like guilt flashed across his face. Then his expression hardened. You're being paranoid, Evelyn. I'm working hard to provide for this family. Is that such a crime? Before I could respond, Lily started crying. I moved to get her, but Mason held up a hand. I've got it, he muttered, heading towards the playpen. I watched as he awkwardly picked up our daughter, his movements stiff and unfamiliar. Lily's cries intensified. Here, let me, I said, reaching for her. Mason jerked away. I said I've got it, he snapped, his voice rising. Lily wailed louder, her little face red with distress. Something in me snapped. Give her to me, Mason. Now. My voice was low and dangerous. For a tense moment, we stared at each other. Then, with a look of disgust, he thrust Lily into my arms. Fine. You deal with it. I'm going to bed. As he stormed upstairs, I held Lily close, my heart racing. This wasn't just about Mason's absences anymore. Something was seriously wrong. The next morning, I woke to find Mason already gone. A hastily scribbled note on the kitchen counter read, "Business trip, back in a few days." My stomach churned with a mix of relief and dread. As I prepared Lily's breakfast, my phone rang. It was Natalie. "Evelyn," she said, her voice tight with urgency. "We need to talk. Can you meet me for lunch today?" I hesitated, remembering our last encounter. "I don't know, Natalie. Things are complicated enough as it is." "Please," she insisted. "It's about Mason. There's something you need to know." An hour later, I sat across from Natalie in a quiet cafe, Lily babbling happily in her stroller beside me. Natalie looked nervous, her fingers twisting a napkin. "Evelyn, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." "What are you talking about?" I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. She took a deep breath. "The affair, it didn't end when I said it did. Mason, he threatened me, said he'd ruin my career if I told you the truth." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "He what?" Natalie's eyes filled with tears. "There's more. I think I might be pregnant." The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the edge of the table, struggling to breathe. "Evelyn?" Natalie's voice seemed to come from far away. "Are you okay?" I stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over my chair. "I have to go," I mumbled, grabbing Lily's stroller. As I rushed out of the cafe, my mind raced. Mason's affair, his threats, a possible pregnancy. It was all too much. I needed to think, to plan. One thing was clear. I couldn't go back to that house. I couldn't pretend everything was fine anymore. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and dialed my mother's number. It was time to make a change, for Lily's sake and my own. The weight of Natalie's revelation bore down on me as I pushed Lily's stroller through the bustling city streets. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the chaos my life had become. Mason's betrayal, his threats, and now a possible pregnancy with another woman. It was all too much to bear. I found myself in front of a small, discreet office building. The sign read Hawkins Investigations. My hand trembled as I reached for the door handle. Was I really going to do this? "Can I help you?" A middle-aged woman with kind eyes greeted me as I entered. I took a deep breath. I need to hire a private investigator. An hour later, I left the office with a strange mix of dread and determination. Mr. Hawkins had listened patiently to my story, his expression growing grimmer with each detail. He promised to start surveillance immediately. As I walked home, my phone buzzed. It was Mason. "Where are you?" His voice was sharp, irritated. "I came home early and you're not here." I swallowed hard. "I took Lily to the park. We'll be home soon." "Hurry up," he snapped before hanging up. My heart raced as I approached our house. Mason's car was in the driveway, and I could see his silhouette pacing in the living room window. "There you are," he said as I entered, his tone accusatory. "Where have you really been, Evelyn?" I busied myself with unbuckling Lily from her stroller. "I told you we were at the park." Mason's eyes narrowed. "For 3 hours? Don't lie to me." Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face paling slightly. "I have to go," he muttered, grabbing his keys. "But you just got home," I protested, a sinking feeling in my stomach. He was already halfway out the door. "Work emergency. Don't wait up." As his car peeled out of the driveway, I felt a surge of anger and determination. Enough was enough. I put Lily down for her nap and then made a call. "Mr. Hawkins? It's Evelyn. My husband just left in a hurry. Can you?" "Already on it, Mrs. Carter," he replied. "I'll keep you updated." The next few hours were agonizing. I paced the house, jumping at every sound, my phone clutched tightly in my hand. Finally, it buzzed. A text from Mr. Hawkins. "Check your email. You'll want to see this." With shaking hands, I opened my laptop. There, in vivid color, were several photos of Mason, with Natalie, entering a hotel. I felt like I might be sick. Despite everything, despite knowing the truth, seeing it was something else entirely. Another text came through. "There's more. Call when you can." Lily's cries from the nursery snapped me back to reality. I went through the motions of changing and feeding her, my mind in a fog. Once she was settled, I called Mr. Hawkins. "Mrs. Carter," he said, his voice grave. "I've uncovered some financial irregularities in your husband's accounts. Large transfers to offshore banks, withdrawals from your joint savings. It appears he's been planning this for some time." The room spun around me. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, Mrs. Carter, that your husband isn't just having an affair. He's preparing to leave the country with a significant portion of your shared assets." The phone slipped from my hand, clattering to the floor. Mason wasn't just betraying me emotionally, he was planning to destroy us financially as well. In that moment, something inside me hardened. The fear, the uncertainty, the desperate hope that things might improve, it all fell away, replaced by a steely resolve. I picked up the phone. "Mr. Hawkins, I need you to document everything, and I mean everything." "Of course, Mrs. Carter. What are you planning to do?" I looked at Lily, peacefully sleeping in her crib, unaware of the storm brewing around her. My voice was steady as I replied, "I'm going to fight, for myself, for my daughter, and for everything we deserve. Mason thinks he can walk away from us. He has no idea what's coming." As I hung up, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The game had changed, and so had I. Mason was about to learn that he'd underestimated the wrong woman. The morning sun streamed through the curtains as I zipped up the last of our suitcases. Lily babbled happily in her playpen, blissfully unaware of the seismic shift about to rock our lives. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. The front door slammed, making me jump. Mason's heavy footsteps echoed through the house. "Evelyn, where are you?" His voice was thick with irritation. I stepped out of the bedroom, my heart pounding. "In here, Mason?" He stormed into view, his face flushed with anger. "What the hell is this?" He thrust a stack of papers at me. I recognized them immediately. Bank statements, hotel receipts, photos of him with Natalie. My evidence. "I think you know exactly what this is," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Mason's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You've been spying on me?" "I've been protecting myself and our daughter," I shot back. "How long did you think you could keep this up, Mason?" "The affair, the secret bank accounts." He lunged forward, grabbing my arm. "You have no idea what you're talking about." I wrenched away from him. "Don't touch me. It's over, Mason. I'm leaving, and I'm taking Lily with me." His face contorted with rage. "Like hell you are?" He made a move towards Lily's playpen. I stepped between them, my voice low and dangerous. "Don't you dare. You come near her, and I swear I'll—" The doorbell interrupted us. Mason froze, his eyes darting to the front door. "That'll be my mother," I said, my chin raised defiantly. "She's here to help us move out." Mason's face paled. "You called your mother?" Evelyn, we can work this out. You don't need to. Work what out, Mason? I snapped. Your affair? The money you've been siphoning from our accounts? Or maybe the fact that Natalie might be pregnant? He stumbled back as if I'd struck him. How did you? It doesn't matter. What matters is that we're done. I want a divorce. The doorbell rang again, more insistently this time. Mason's demeanor suddenly shifted, his voice taking on a pleading tone. Evelyn, please, think about Lily. She needs both her parents. I felt a flicker of doubt, but then I remembered the photos, the lies, the years of manipulation. No, Mason. What Lily needs is a mother who's strong enough to walk away from a toxic situation, and that's exactly what I'm doing. I moved to open the door, but Mason blocked my path. You're not taking my daughter anywhere. Step aside, Mason, I warned. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be. For a tense moment, we stared each other down. Then, with a defeated slump of his shoulders, Mason moved away. I opened the door to find my mother, Susan, her face etched with concern. Evelyn, honey, is everything okay? It will be, Mom, I said, ushering her inside. Can you get Lily? I'll grab the bags. As we prepared to leave, Mason made one last desperate attempt. Evelyn, please, I love you. We can fix this. I turned to face him, my voice firm. No, Mason, we can't. You broke this, and now you have to live with the consequences. With Lily in my arms and my mother by my side, I walked out of the house that had once been our home. As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of Mason in the rearview mirror, standing alone on the porch. A mix of emotions washed over me, relief, sadness, fear, and a glimmer of hope. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. You did the right thing, honey, my mother said softly, squeezing my hand. I nodded, my eyes fixed on the road ahead. This wasn't the end. It was a new beginning. For me, for Lily, and for the life we deserved. The kitchen in my mother's house was warm and filled with the aroma of fresh coffee, but I couldn't shake the chill that had settled in my bones. Lily babbled happily in her high chair, oblivious to the tension surrounding her. Evelyn, honey, my mother, Susan, said gently, you need to eat something. I stared at the untouched toast on my plate. I can't, Mom. Not until we figure this out. The sound of the front door opening made us both turn. My stepfather, John, walked in, his face grim. I just got off the phone with our lawyer, he said, sitting down heavily at the table. It's worse than we thought. My heart raced. What do you mean? John sighed, running a hand through his silver hair. Mason's been busy. He's trying to claim you're an unfit mother, Evelyn. He's going for full custody of Lily. The room spun around me. He can't do that, I whispered. He barely even looked at her for months. It gets worse, John continued. He's denying the affair with Natalie, claiming you're paranoid and unstable, and those offshore accounts we found, he's saying they were business investments you knew about. Anger surged through me, hot and fierce. That lying bastard! Language, dear, my mother murmured, glancing at Lily. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. What do we do now? John leaned forward, his eyes serious. We fight. Hard. I've got some connections at Mason's company. If we can prove the affair happened at work, it could change everything. Just then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Penelope. We need to talk. It's about Mason. Meet me at the park in an hour. I showed the message to my parents. Should I go? My mother frowned. I don't trust that woman. She's always been too close to Mason. But she might have information we need, John pointed out. I stood up, decision made. I'm going. Mom, can you watch Lily? An hour later, I sat on a park bench, my nerves on edge. Penelope approached, her designer sunglasses hiding her eyes. Evelyn, she said, sitting beside me. I'm so sorry about all this. I cut to the chase. What do you know, Penelope? She hesitated, then reached into her purse. Mason doesn't know I have this, she said, handing me a USB drive. It's emails between him and Natalie. And financial records. He's been planning this for over a year, Evelyn. The affair, the money, everything. My hands shook as I clutched the drive. Why are you giving me this? Penelope's face crumpled. Because I can't stand by and watch him destroy you and Lily. He tried to get me involved in his schemes. I refused, but I should have told you sooner. I'm so sorry. As she spoke, a figure caught my eye across the park. Mason. He was striding towards us, his face twisted with rage. Penelope, he shouted. What the hell are you doing? I stood up, adrenaline coursing through me. Stay back, Mason, I warned. He ignored me, grabbing Penelope's arm. "You promised you wouldn't interfere." "Let her go," I demanded, my voice stronger than I felt. Mason turned on me, his eyes wild. "You've ruined everything," he snarled. "I'll make sure you never see Lily again." Something in me snapped. All the fear, all the pain of the past months crystallized into a single, burning point of rage. "No, Mason," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You're the one who's ruined everything, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you really are." I held up the USB drive. "It's over. You've lost." For a moment, Mason looked truly afraid. Then, with a growl of frustration, he lunged for the drive. Time seemed to slow. I saw Penelope's shocked face, heard her cry out a warning. But I was already moving, dodging Mason's grasp and backing away. "Don't do this, Evelyn," Mason pleaded, his voice suddenly desperate. "We can work it out, for Lily's sake." I stood my ground, years of pent-up emotion pouring out. "No, Mason, this ends now, for Lily's sake and for mine." As I turned to walk away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, I knew with certainty that I would win. The courtroom fell silent as the judge cleared his throat. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. Beside me, John squeezed my hand reassuringly. Across the aisle, Mason sat with his lawyer, his face a mask of cool indifference. "In the matter of Carter versus Carter," the judge began, "this court has reviewed all evidence presented." I held my breath, my mind racing through the events of the past few weeks. John's connections at Mason's company had paid off, providing irrefutable proof of his affair with Natalie. The financial records Penelope had given me exposed Mason's elaborate scheme to hide assets. It had all led to this moment. And fines in favor of the plaintiff, Evelyn Carter. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. I sat stunned as the judge continued. "Mr. Carter's actions constitute a clear breach of fiduciary duty. The court awards Mrs. Carter full custody of their daughter, Lily, with Mr. Carter granted supervised visitation. Furthermore, Mr. Carter is ordered to pay alimony and child support as outlined in the divorce settlement." Tears of relief streamed down my face. It was over. We had won. As we left the courthouse, a commotion erupted behind us. Mason came barreling down the steps, his face contorted with rage. "You've ruined me," he shouted. "I've lost everything because of you." John stepped protectively in front of me, but I gently moved him aside. This was my battle to finish. "No, Mason," I said, my voice steady. "You ruined yourself, your choices, your lies, your betrayal. That's what cost you everything." Mason's anger seemed to deflate, replaced by a desperate pleading. "Evelyn, please, I'm sorry. I'll do anything. Just give me another chance." For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I had once loved, but that man was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. "It's too late for that, Mason," I replied softly. "I hope you find peace, for Lily's sake, if nothing else. But our life together is over." As Mason was led away by his lawyer, I turned to my family, my mother, John, and little Lily in her stroller. Their love and support had been my anchor through this storm. "Let's go home," I said, feeling lighter than I had in years. Months passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. I returned to work, finding joy in my career once again. Lily thrived, growing more curious and vibrant every day, and I discovered strength I never knew I possessed. One sunny afternoon, as I pushed Lily on the swings in the park, a familiar face approached. It was Natalie, her eyes downcast and her steps hesitant. "Evelyn," she said softly, I don't know if you want to hear this, but I'm sorry for everything." I studied her face, searching for any hint of deception. Finding none, I nodded. "Thank you, Natalie. I hope you found peace too." As she walked away, Lily squealed with delight, reaching for me. I scooped her up, holding her close. "You know, little one," I whispered, "sometimes life doesn't go the way we plan, but that doesn't mean it can't be beautiful." Later that evening, as I tucked Lily into bed, my phone buzzed with a text from Penelope. "Dinner next week? I miss my niece and my sister-in-law." I smiled, typing back a quick yes. Family, I had learned, came in many forms. As I settled onto the porch swing, watching the sun set over the neighborhood, I felt a profound sense of contentment wash over me. The road had been hard, the battles fierce, but I had emerged stronger, wiser, and more true to myself than ever before. This wasn't the life I had once dreamed of, but it was a good life, a life of my own making. And as I closed my eyes, Listening to the gentle evening sounds and feeling the warm breeze on my face, I knew that the best was yet to come. For the first time in years, I was truly completely free. And that freedom, it tasted sweeter than I ever could have imagined.
My name is Martha, and I never thought I'd be plotting revenge against my own mother-in-law. But here I am, staring at the chaos of my living room, wondering how it all came to this. Is this how you intend to raise Eli? Evelyn's voice dripped with disdain as she surveyed the disarray. The words cut deeper than I expected, igniting a fire I hadn't realized was there. I clutched my newborn son closer to my chest, willing myself to stay calm. Evelyn, I wasn't expecting you today. How nice of you to drop by. I managed, my tone barely concealing my irritation. Evelyn's perfectly manicured nails trailed along the dusty coffee table. Clearly, she sniffed. I thought I'd come see how my grandson is faring. Someone needs to ensure he's being properly cared for. The implication stung. I'd been up all night with a colicky baby, and housework was the least of my concerns. Eli is doing just fine, I said, my voice tight. We're still adjusting, but Adjusting? Evelyn interrupted, her eyebrows arching. My dear, it's been 2 months. Surely, you should have some semblance of order by now. When Simon was a baby, I had a strict routine in place within days. I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to point out that Simon had been a notoriously difficult child, according to his siblings. Instead, I forced a smile. We're finding our own way, Evelyn. Every baby is different. The front door opened, and Simon walked in, his eyes widening at the scene before him. Mom, what are you doing here? Evelyn's demeanor instantly softened. Simon, darling, I came to check on little Eli. I'm so glad you're home. Perhaps you can talk some sense into Martha about proper child rearing. Simon's gaze darted between us, his discomfort palpable. I'm sure Martha's doing a great job, Mom. She's a natural mother. I felt a flicker of gratitude, but it was quickly extinguished by Evelyn's next words. Natural? Look at this place, Simon. It's a pigsty. And Martha looks like she hasn't slept in days. Is this really the environment you want for your son? Simon's shoulders slumped. Mom, we're managing. It's not easy, but not easy. Evelyn scoffed. Of course it's not easy. But that's no excuse for neglect. Neglect? I couldn't hold back any longer. How dare you accuse me of neglecting my child? I have been up every 2 hours feeding him, changing him, loving him. Just because the house isn't spotless doesn't mean Martha, Simon cut in, his voice pleading. Mom's just trying to help. Maybe we could use some advice. I stared at him, incredulous. Advice? Simon, your mother just waltzed in here uninvited and started criticizing everything. That's not advice, that's an attack. Evelyn placed a hand on Simon's arm. You see how she overreacts? This can't be good for the baby. All this tension and chaos. The only tension and chaos here is what you brought with you, I snapped. Simon ran a hand through his hair, looking torn. Let's all just calm down. Mom, maybe now isn't the best time for a visit. We appreciate your concern, but I see, Evelyn said, her voice cold. Well, if you'd rather muddle through on your own, far be it from me to interfere. But mark my words, Simon. This isn't sustainable. Something will have to change. As she swept out of the house, I caught a glimpse of something in her eyes that sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't just disapproval or concern. It was calculation. Simon sighed heavily as the door closed behind her. I'm sorry, Martha. You know how she can be. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the conflict etched on his face. In that moment, I realized this was more than just an overbearing mother-in-law. This was the beginning of a war, and I wasn't sure whose side my husband was on. Simon, I said quietly, we need to talk about your mother. And about us. Little did I know, that conversation would set in motion a chain of events that would change our lives forever. The days following Evelyn's visit were a blur of sleepless nights and tense silences. Simon and I tiptoed around each other, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy between us. Eli's cries seemed to echo through the house, a constant reminder of the stakes in this unfolding drama. One afternoon, as I folded laundry with Eli napping nearby, Simon's phone buzzed on the coffee table. I glanced at it, my heart sinking when I saw Evelyn's name on the screen. Simon snatched it up, his eyes darting to me guiltily. "It's just Mom," he muttered, retreating to the bedroom. I stood there, a tiny onesie clutched in my hands, feeling more alone than ever. The seed of doubt Evelyn had planted was taking root, growing with each hushed phone call and evasive glance from my husband. Later that night, I confronted Simon. "We need to talk about your mother," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Simon sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Martha, please. Can't we just let it go?" "Let it go?" I echoed, incredulous. "Simon, she came into our home and accused me of neglecting our son. And you just stood there." "What was I supposed to do?" he snapped. "She's my mother, Martha. You can't expect me to choose sides." "I expect you to stand up for your wife and child," I retorted, my anger rising. "Or is that too much to ask?" Simon's face softened. "Of course not. I love you and Eli more than anything. It's just complicated with Mom." I shook my head, fighting back tears. "It shouldn't be complicated, Simon. We're your family now." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "I need some air," I mumbled, grabbing my coat. As I walked through the quiet neighborhood, my mind raced. Was I overreacting? Was Evelyn right about me? The doubts gnawed at me, threatening to overwhelm the fierce love I felt for my son. My phone buzzed, and I saw a message from my friend Clara. "How are you holding up, Mama? Coffee tomorrow?" I texted back a quick affirmative, grateful for the lifeline. Clara had been my rock since Eli was born, offering support without judgment. The next morning, as I nursed Eli, I heard Simon's muffled voice from the study. Curiosity got the better of me, and I crept closer, straining to hear. "I know, Mom," Simon was saying, his tone weary. "But Martha's trying her best. We can't just—" There was a pause, and then Simon's voice dropped even lower. "That's not an option. We'll figure it out ourselves." My blood ran cold. What wasn't an option? What were they planning? I retreated to the nursery, my mind whirling. When Simon emerged, I pretended to be absorbed in changing Eli's diaper. "I'm heading out," Simon said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Work stuff. I'll be back for dinner." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As soon as the door closed behind him, I grabbed my phone and texted Clara. "Change of plans. Can you come over? It's urgent." Clara arrived within the hour, her face etched with concern. "Martha, what's going on? You look terrible." I poured out everything. Evelyn's visit, Simon's behavior, and the overheard conversation. Clara listened intently, her expression darkening. "Martha," she said slowly, "I hate to say this, but it sounds like Evelyn might be plotting something. And Simon, he might be caught in the middle." I nodded, the reality of the situation hitting me full force. "What do I do, Clara?"
"I can't lose Eli."
"I won't." Clara squeezed my hand. "We'll figure this out together. First, we need to find out exactly what Evelyn's up to, and then we fight back." As I looked at my sleeping son, a fierce determination welled up inside me. Evelyn had no idea who she was messing with. I was a mother now, and I would do whatever it took to protect my child. Little did I know, the battle ahead would test every ounce of strength I possessed and reveal sides of myself I never knew existed. The morning sun filtered through the nursery curtains as I rocked Eli, my mind racing with plans and fears. Clara's words echoed in my head. "We need to find out exactly what Evelyn's up to." I kissed Eli's forehead, steeling myself for what I knew I had to do. As soon as Simon left for work, I began my search. I combed through drawers, rifled through files, and scoured every inch of our home office. Just as I was about to give up, my hand brushed against something behind Simon's desk drawer. A letter, hidden away. With trembling fingers, I unfolded it. The elegant script was unmistakably Evelyn's. "My dearest Simon, I hope you've given serious thought to our discussion. Martha's instability and clear inability to care for Eli properly leave us with no choice. I've spoken with my lawyer, and he assures me we have a strong case for custody. With your support, we can ensure Eli has the upbringing he deserves. Remember, darling, sometimes we must be cruel to be kind. Martha will understand in time that this is best for everyone. All my love, Mother. The world tilted on its axis. I stumbled back, clutching the letter to my chest, while rising in my throat. How could Simon even consider this? How long had they been planning to take my baby away? I don't remember dialing Clara's number, but suddenly her voice was in my ear, calm and steady. Martha? What's wrong? They're trying to take Eli, I choked out. Evelyn and Simon. They want custody. Clara, I can't lose him. Listen to me, Clara said firmly. Pack a bag. Get Eli's things. Come to my place right now. We'll figure this out together, I promise. In a daze, I threw clothes and diapers into a suitcase, gathered Eli's essentials, and fled the house that no longer felt like home. Clara was waiting at her door, arms open. As soon as I crossed the threshold, the tears I'd been holding back burst forth. How could he do this? I sobbed as Clara held me. I thought he loved us. We don't know the whole story yet, Clara soothed, though I could hear the anger simmering beneath her words. But we're going to find out. And we're going to fight this, Martha. You're not alone. As the day wore on, my phone buzzed incessantly with messages from Simon. Where are you? Why aren't you home? We need to talk. I ignored them all, focusing instead on Eli's needs and on formulating a plan with Clara. We need evidence, Clara said, pacing her living room. Proof of Evelyn's manipulation, of her attempts to undermine you. And we need to understand Simon's role in all this. Is he a willing participant, or is he being coerced? I nodded, my shock giving way to determination. I'll reach out to Simon's siblings. They've dealt with Evelyn's control for years. Maybe they can help. As night fell, a knock at the door made us both jump. Clara peered through the peephole, then turned to me, her face grim. It's Simon. My heart raced. I can't face him. Not yet. Clara squeezed my hand. You don't have to. Let me handle this. I retreated to the guest room with Eli, listening intently as Clara opened the door. Where are they? Simon's voice was frantic. Clara, please. I need to explain. Explain what, Simon? Clara's tone was ice. How you're planning to steal your son from his mother?
What? No.
That's not. How did you? Martha found the letter, Simon. From your mother. About taking custody of Eli. There was a long pause, then a heavy sigh. It's not what you think. I never agreed to that. I've been trying to talk Mom out of it, to protect Martha and Eli. And yet you hid it from your wife, Clara retorted. Go home, Simon. Martha needs time. And you need to decide where your loyalties truly lie. As the door closed, I hugged Eli closer, tears silently streaming down my face. In that moment, I knew nothing would ever be the same. But as I looked at my son's innocent face, I felt a fierce resolve take hold. Evelyn had no idea who she was up against. I was a mother fighting for her child, and I would move heaven and earth to keep Eli safe. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready for war. The next morning, I woke with a renewed sense of purpose. Clara's apartment had become our war room, and we were ready to strategize. As Eli napped peacefully, I steeled myself for the task ahead. We need allies, I told Clara, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Simon's siblings might be our best bet. They've lived with Evelyn's manipulation their whole lives. Clara nodded, her eyes gleaming with determination. Good thinking. Do you have their contact information? I hesitated. Not all of them. But I know Simon's sister, Rachel, is sympathetic. She's always been kind to me, despite Evelyn's influence. With shaking hands, I dialed Rachel's number. To my relief, she answered on the second ring. Martha, is everything okay? Rachel's voice was laced with concern. I took a deep breath. Rachel, I need your help. It's about Evelyn and Simon. Over the next hour, I poured out the whole story, Evelyn's criticisms, Simon's complicity, and the shocking custody letter. Rachel listened in stunned silence. "Oh, Martha," she finally breathed. "I'm so sorry. I knew Mom was overbearing. But this is beyond anything I imagined." "Have you experienced anything like this with her?" I asked, hope rising in my chest. Rachel's bitter laugh sent chills down my spine. "Where do I start? The constant criticism, the manipulation, the way she pits us against each other. It's her favorite game." As Rachel shared her own experiences, a pattern emerged. Evelyn's tactics were always the same: divide and conquer, using guilt and fear to maintain control. "There's something else," Rachel said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Something that might help you. Have you ever heard of Grandma Rose's journal?" I frowned. "No, what journal?" "It's a family heirloom. Mom's always been obsessed with it, but Grandma Rose left it to all of us collectively. The thing is, no one's actually read it. Mom keeps it locked away, claims she's protecting it." My mind raced with possibilities. "Do you think it contains something Evelyn doesn't want anyone to see?" "I'd bet my life on it," Rachel replied. "Mom's always been terrified of anyone getting their hands on it. It's in the old family home, in a safe in her study." As we hatched a plan to retrieve the journal, I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in days. If we could uncover Evelyn's secrets, maybe we could put an end to her machinations once and for all. Clara, who had been listening intently, chimed in. "We need to be careful. If Evelyn catches wind of what we're doing, she might accelerate her plans for custody." I nodded, the weight of our mission settling on my shoulders. "We'll need a distraction. Something to keep Evelyn occupied while we search for the journal." Rachel's voice crackled through the speaker. "Leave that to me. I'll arrange a family dinner, get everyone together. Mom won't be able to resist the chance to play her games with all of us there." As we finalized our plans, a text from Simon lit up my phone. "Please come home. We need to talk. I love you." I stared at the screen, conflicting emotions warring within me. Part of me longed to believe him, to run back into his arms and pretend none of this had happened. But the fierce, protective mother in me knew there was no going back. "What are you going to do?" Clara asked softly. I squared my shoulders, a new resolve hardening my voice. "I'm going to fight. For Eli, for myself, and for every member of this family Evelyn has ever tried to control. It's time to end her reign of manipulation." As I looked at Eli, peacefully unaware of the storm brewing around him, I made a silent vow. No matter what it took, I would create a world for him free from Evelyn's toxic influence. The battle ahead would be difficult, but with Clara and Rachel by my side, I felt ready to face whatever came our way. Little did I know, the secrets hidden in Grandma Rose's journal would shake the very foundations of our family and test the limits of love, loyalty, and forgiveness. The night of the family dinner arrived, and my heart pounded as Clara and I approached Evelyn's sprawling Victorian home. Eli was safely with a trusted sitter, allowing us to focus on our mission. Rachel had orchestrated the perfect distraction, ensuring Evelyn would be occupied downstairs while we searched for Grandma Rose's journal. As we slipped through the side entrance, Rachel met us with a tight hug. "Mom's holding court in the living room," she whispered. "You should have about an hour before dinner's served." I nodded, steeling myself. "Let's do this." Clara and I crept up the ornate staircase, our footsteps muffled by the plush carpet. Evelyn's study loomed at the end of the hall, a forbidden sanctuary I'd never dared enter before. The door creaked softly as we entered, and I held my breath, half expecting Evelyn to materialize and catch us red-handed. But the room remained silent, filled only with the musty scent of old books and polished wood. "There," Clara pointed to an antique safe tucked behind Evelyn's desk. "That must be it." My hands trembled as I approached, recalling the combination Rachel had provided. With each turn of the dial, I felt the weight of our actions pressing down on me. This wasn't just about protecting Eli anymore. It was about uncovering the truth that had poisoned this family for generations. The safe clicked open, revealing a leather-bound journal nestled inside. As I lifted it out, a folded paper fluttered to the floor. Clara snatched it up, her eyes widening as she scanned its contents. "Martha," she breathed, "you need to see this." It was a letter, dated decades ago, from Grandma Rose to Evelyn. The words leapt off the page, each one a dagger to my heart. "Evelyn, my darling daughter, I write this with a heavy heart, knowing the pain it may cause. But the truth can no longer be buried. You're not my biological child. We adopted you as an infant, desperate for a child of our own." The letter went on, detailing the circumstances of Evelyn's adoption and Grandma Rose's fears about Evelyn's increasingly controlling behavior. It ended with a plea for Evelyn to seek help and break the cycle of manipulation she'd fallen into. "This explains so much," I whispered, my mind reeling. Evelyn's obsession with control, her fear of the journal being read, it all stemmed from this buried secret. We quickly photographed the letter and turned our attention to the journal. As we flipped through its pages, a sordid history unfolded. Grandma Rose had meticulously documented Evelyn's schemes over the years, manipulated inheritances, sabotaged relationships, even blackmail. "This is it," Clara said, her voice tight with emotion. "This is what we need to expose Evelyn and protect Eli." Just then, footsteps echoed in the hallway. We froze, our hearts pounding in unison. The door handle turned, and Simon stepped into the room, his eyes widening in shock as he took in the scene before him. "Martha, what are you doing here?" His gaze fell on the open safe, the journal in my hands. "Is that Grandma Rose's journal?" For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Everything hinged on this moment. My marriage, Eli's future, the fate of the entire family. I straightened my spine, meeting Simon's confused stare with unwavering resolve. "Simon, we need to talk. About your mother, about us, about everything." I held out the letter. "There's something you need to know." As Simon read, his face paled, emotions flickering across his features, shock, disbelief, anger, and finally, a dawning understanding. He looked up at me, tears glistening in his eyes. "I had no idea," he whispered. "All these years, the way she's acted, it all makes sense now." Before I could respond, Evelyn's voice rang out from downstairs, calling everyone to dinner. The moment of truth had arrived sooner than we'd anticipated. Simon squared his shoulders, a new determination in his eyes. "It's time to end this, once and for all. Are you ready?" I nodded, clutching the journal to my chest. As we descended the stairs, I felt a shift in the air, as if the very foundations of the house were trembling. The secrets hidden within these pages were about to shatter Evelyn's carefully constructed world, and I prayed we'd all emerge stronger on the other side. The dining room was a tableau of forced smiles and nervous glances as we gathered around Evelyn's immaculately set table. Simon's siblings, Rachel, Michael, and Emma, exchanged worried looks, sensing the tension crackling in the air. Evelyn, oblivious to the storm about to break, presided over the scene with her usual air of superiority. "Martha, dear," Evelyn's saccharine voice cut through the stilted small talk, I do hope you've been taking better care of little Eli. You look so tired." I felt Simon stiffen beside me, his hand finding mine under the table. "Actually, Mother," he said, his voice steadier than I'd ever heard it, "Martha's been an incredible mother. It's time we talked about your behavior." Evelyn's eyes narrowed, her smile faltering for a moment before reasserting itself. "Whatever do you mean, darling? I'm only looking out for my grandson's well-being. By trying to take him away from his mother?" The words burst from me, fueled by weeks of pent-up anger and fear. "We know about the custody plans, Evelyn. We found the letter." A hush fell over the table. Rachel gasped, while Michael and Emma exchanged shocked glances. Evelyn's face drained of color, her carefully constructed mask slipping. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice brittle. "Simon, surely you don't believe these ridiculous accusations?" Simon took a deep breath, squeezing my hand. "It's true, Mother. I've seen the letter, but that's not all we found." With trembling hands, I placed Grandma Rose's journal on the table. Evelyn's eyes widened in recognition, a flicker of fear crossing her face. "Where did you get that?" she hissed, reaching for the journal. I pulled it back, out of her reach. It doesn't matter, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. What matters is what's inside. The truth about your past, Evelyn. About who you really are. As I began to read from the journal, recounting Evelyn's adoption and subsequent manipulations, the room fell into a stunned silence. Evelyn's siblings listened in horror as years of lies and schemes were laid bare. You went through my private things. Evelyn sputtered, her composure crumbling. How dare you? How dare we? Simon's voice rose, years of suppressed anger finally breaking free. How dare you, Mother? You've manipulated and controlled this family for decades. You tried to take my son away from his mother. And for what? To fill some void in your own life. Evelyn's face contorted, a mix of rage and desperation. You don't understand, she pleaded, looking around the table for support. I did it all for this family. To keep us together. To make us strong. By tearing us apart? Rachel interjected, tears streaming down her face. By pitting us against each other? That's not love, Mother. That's control. As the full weight of her actions sank in, Evelyn seemed to shrink in her chair. The formidable matriarch was gone, replaced by a scared, vulnerable woman. I never meant to hurt anyone, she whispered, her voice breaking. I just didn't want to lose you all, like I lost my real parents. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity, but then I remembered Eli and the lengths Evelyn had gone to try and take him from me. Steeling myself, I stood up, the journal clutched to my chest. It's over, Evelyn, I said firmly. The lies, the manipulation, all of it ends now. We're taking control of our own lives, our own family. Simon stood beside me, his arm wrapping around my waist. Mother, we love you, he said softly. But we can't let this continue. It's time for you to get help, to face the truth about your past and your actions. Evelyn looked up at us, her eyes brimming with tears. For a moment, I saw a glimmer of the scared little girl she must have been, desperate for love and belonging. But then her expression hardened, a familiar glint of defiance in her eyes. You'll regret this, she said, her voice low and dangerous. All of you. You have no idea what I'm capable of. As Evelyn stormed out of the room, leaving a wake of shocked silence behind her, I realized the battle was far from over. We had won this skirmish, but the war for our family's future was just beginning. And Evelyn, wounded but not defeated, was more dangerous than ever. The days following the explosive family dinner were a whirlwind of tension and uncertainty. Evelyn had disappeared, leaving only a trail of unanswered calls and cryptic text messages. Simon and I retreated to our home, clinging to each other and Eli as we braced for the inevitable storm. It was a crisp autumn morning when the doorbell rang, shattering the fragile peace we'd managed to construct. Simon and I exchanged wary glances before he went to answer it. I held Eli close, my heart pounding as I heard Evelyn's voice drift in from the entryway. Simon, darling, we need to talk. Alone. I stepped into the hallway, Eli nestled against my chest. Anything you have to say, you can say in front of both of us, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Evelyn's eyes narrowed as they fell on me, but she composed herself quickly. Very well. I've come to offer an olive branch. A chance to put this unfortunate misunderstanding behind us. Simon tensed beside me. Misunderstanding? Mother, you tried to take our son away. You manipulated our entire family for years. I did what I thought was best, Evelyn insisted, her voice taking on a pleading tone. Can't you see that? Everything I've done has been for this family. I felt a surge of anger rise within me. No, Evelyn. Everything you've done has been for yourself. To maintain control, to fill the void left by your own insecurities. Evelyn's facade cracked, revealing a flash of the desperation I'd glimpsed at the dinner. You don't understand. None of you do. I can't lose this family. I won't. She reached into her purse, pulling out a thick envelope. I have connections, influence. I can make things very difficult for you both if you insist on pursuing this course of action. Simon stepped forward, placing himself between Evelyn and us. Are you threatening us, Mother? I'm offering you a choice, Evelyn said, her voice cold. Drop this nonsense about the journal, agree to shared custody of Eli, and we can all move forward as a family. Refuse and, well, I'm sure you'd hate for certain information about your past indiscretions to come to light, Simon. I felt Simon stiffen, and for a heart-stopping moment, I feared he might waver. But then he straightened, his voice firm as he addressed his mother. No more, Mother. No more threats, no more manipulation. It ends here. Evelyn's eyes widened in disbelief. Simon, think about what you're saying. Everything I've done for you. For this family. No, Simon said, his voice breaking slightly. You did it for yourself. To control us. To fill some void in your own life. But we're not your pawns, Mother. We're your family. And if you can't see that, if you can't accept us as we are, then you leave us no choice. He turned to me, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and resolve. Martha, I'm so sorry for ever doubting you, for not standing up to her sooner. Can you forgive me? Tears welled in my eyes as I nodded, shifting Eli to one arm so I could take Simon's hand. Together, we faced Evelyn, presenting a united front. This is your last chance, Mother, Simon said softly. Get help. Deal with your past, with your need for control. If you do, there might be a place for you in our lives. But if you continue down this path, if you try to come between us and our son again, we'll have no choice but to cut you out of our lives completely. Evelyn stared at us, her face a mask of shock and fury. For a moment, I thought she might lash out, might make good on her threats. But then, something in her seemed to crumble. The formidable matriarch we'd known all these years vanished, leaving behind a small, frightened woman. I don't know how to be any other way, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Then learn, I said, surprising myself with the compassion in my voice. For your sake, and for ours. As Evelyn turned and walked away, her shoulders slumped in defeat, I felt a weight lift from my chest. The battle wasn't over. There would be legal matters to settle, wounds to heal, trust to rebuild. But in that moment, holding Eli and standing hand in hand with Simon, I knew we had taken the first step towards reclaiming our lives and our family. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in months, I felt hope blossoming in my heart. We had faced the storm together and emerged stronger for it. Whatever came next, we would face it as a family, on our own terms. 6 months had passed since our confrontation with Evelyn, and the world seemed to have shifted on its axis. As I watched Eli take his first wobbly steps across our living room, I marveled at how much had changed, both within our family and within myself. Simon knelt beside me, his face beaming with pride as he coaxed Eli forward. That's it, little man. Come to Daddy. Eli giggled, his chubby legs carrying him into Simon's waiting arms. As I watched them together, my heart swelled with love and gratitude. We had weathered the storm and emerged stronger for it. The road to healing hadn't been easy. There were nights filled with tears and difficult conversations as Simon and I worked to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. But with each passing day, our bond grew stronger, forged in the fire of adversity we had faced together. Evelyn, true to her word, had sought professional help. It was a long and painful process for her, confronting the deep-seated insecurities and fears that had driven her manipulative behavior for so long. While our relationship with her remained cautious, we had begun to see glimmers of the loving mother and grandmother she could be. Freed from the chains of her past, the rest of the family, too, was healing. Rachel, Michael, and Emma had become regular fixtures in our lives. The siblings finally able to forge genuine connections without Evelyn's interference. Family dinners, once a source of dread, had become joyous occasions filled with laughter and honest conversation. As for me, I had discovered a strength I never knew I possessed. The woman who had once doubted her ability to be a good mother now stood tall, confident in her choices and fiercely protective of her family. I had even started a support group for new mothers, sharing my experiences and helping others navigate the challenges of early parenthood and difficult family dynamics. A knock at the door interrupted our family moment. I opened it to find Clara, her arms laden with gifts for Eli's upcoming first birthday. "Look at this big boy," she exclaimed, setting down her packages to scoop Eli into a hug. "I can't believe how much he's grown." As Clara settled in, regaling us with stories of her latest adventures, I was struck by a wave of contentment. This was what family should be, a network of love and support, built on honesty and mutual respect. Later that night, as Simon and I tucked Eli into bed, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us here. "Do you ever wonder," I asked softly, "if we did the right thing? With your mother, I mean." Simon was quiet for a moment, his hand finding mine in the dim light of the nursery. "I think we did the only thing we could do," he said finally. "We broke the cycle. For Eli, for ourselves, and even for Mom." I nodded, leaning into his embrace. "Do you think true forgiveness is possible? After everything that happened?" "I don't know," Simon admitted. "But I think forgiveness isn't always about forgetting or excusing. Sometimes it's about choosing to move forward, to give people the chance to be better." As we stood there, watching our son sleep peacefully, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. We had faced our demons, confronted the painful truths that had threatened to tear us apart, and emerged on the other side, battered, perhaps, but unbroken. The future stretched out before us, full of promise and possibility. There would be challenges ahead, of course. Parenthood and family life were never without their trials. But I knew now that we had the strength to face whatever came our way, together. As I drifted off to sleep that night, Eli's soft breathing a comforting rhythm in the background, I found myself pondering one last question. In the intricate web of family relationships, where does one draw the line between loyalty and self-preservation? Between forgiveness and protecting oneself from further harm? Perhaps I realized there was no universal answer. Each family, each individual, must find their own path through the tangled emotions of love, hurt, and healing. Our journey had taught me that true strength lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall, and in having the courage to redefine our relationships on our own terms. With that thought, I closed my eyes, ready to embrace whatever new adventures tomorrow might bring. The storm had passed, and a new dawn had broken, not just for our little family, but for all of us who had learned to stand tall in the face of adversity and to find the light even in the darkest of times.
The doorbell chimed, shattering the fragile peace I'd managed to cultivate in our home. I froze, spatula in hand, a half-flipped pancake sizzling on the griddle. It was too early for visitors, especially on a Saturday morning. "I'll get it," Kevin called from the living room, his footsteps padding towards the front door. I turned back to the stove, trying to shake off the sudden unease that gripped me. As I slid the slightly burnt pancake onto a plate, I heard a familiar voice that made my blood run cold. "Kevin, darling, surprise!" Beatrice, my mother-in-law, the last person I wanted to see on what was supposed to be a quiet weekend with my husband. I took a deep breath, plastered on a smile, and walked into the living room. There she stood, all perfectly coiffed hair and designer clothes, embracing Kevin as if she hadn't seen him in years. It had been 3 months. "Lisa," Beatrice said, her eyes narrowing as she spotted me. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "Not at all," I lied, my fingers tightening around the spatula. "We were just having breakfast. Would you like to join us?" Kevin shot me a grateful look, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. He knew how difficult things were between his mother and me. "That would be lovely," Beatrice said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "I'm famished after my flight." As we settled around the kitchen table, I couldn't help but notice how Beatrice dominated the conversation, peppering Kevin with questions about work and his social life. I might as well have been invisible. "So, any news on the baby front?" Beatrice asked suddenly, her gaze zeroing in on me. I felt my cheeks flush. "We're still trying," I managed, avoiding Kevin's eyes. Beatrice clicked her tongue. "Well, you're not getting any younger, dear. Maybe you should see a specialist." "Mom," Kevin warned, but Beatrice waved him off. "I'm just concerned," she said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. "After all, I want grandchildren while I'm still young enough to enjoy them." I pulled my hand away, anger bubbling up inside me. "We'll have children when we're ready, Beatrice. It's not a race." "Of course not," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "I just hope you're not putting your career ahead of starting a family. That would be selfish, don't you think?" "That's enough," Kevin said firmly, standing up. "Mom, why don't we go for a walk? I'll show you the new garden Lisa's been working on." As they left, I slumped in my chair, fighting back tears. This was supposed to be our home, our safe haven. But with Beatrice here, it felt like a battlefield. I was clearing the dishes when they returned, Beatrice's voice drifting in from the hallway. "And really, Kevin, you should think about redecorating. This place could use a woman's touch." I gritted my teeth, resisting the urge to throw a plate across the room. Instead, I marched into the living room, where Beatrice was critically eyeing our family photos. "I decorated this house," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Kevin and I chose everything together." Beatrice turned, her eyebrows raised. "Oh? Well, I suppose everyone has different tastes. I just thought, since I'll be staying for a while, we could make some changes." I blinked, feeling as if the floor had dropped out from under me. "Staying? For how long?" "Well," Beatrice said, settling herself on our couch like a queen on her throne, "since your father left me, Kevin, I thought I'd come and spend some quality time with my son, and his wife, of course," she added, almost as an afterthought. I looked at Kevin, silently pleading with him to say something, anything. But he just stood there looking uncomfortable and conflicted. I need some air," I muttered, grabbing my keys and heading for the door. As I stepped outside, I heard Beatrice's voice floating after me. "My goodness, Kevin, is she always this dramatic?" I slammed the door behind me, my hands shaking as I fumbled with my car keys. This was supposed to be my home, my life. But with Beatrice here, I felt like an outsider in my own house. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a long, difficult battle, and I wasn't sure I had the strength to fight it. I stared at the little plastic stick in my trembling hands, hardly daring to believe what I was seeing. 2 pink lines. After months of disappointment and heartache, it was finally happening. I was pregnant. "Kevin," I called out, my voice cracking with emotion. "Kevin, come here." He appeared in the doorway, his face etched with concern. "Lisa, what's wrong?" I held up the test, tears of joy streaming down my face. "We're having a baby." For a moment, Kevin just stood there, frozen. Then his face broke into a wide grin, and he swept me up in his arms, spinning me around the bathroom. "We're having a baby!" he shouted, laughing. "Oh my God, Lisa, we're going to be parents!" As he set me down, I caught sight of Beatrice hovering in the hallway, her expression unreadable. My heart sank a little, but I refused to let her dampen this moment. "Congratulations," she said, her voice cool. "I suppose I'll be a grandmother after all." Kevin either didn't notice her tone or chose to ignore it. "Isn't it wonderful, Mom? You're going to be a grandma." Beatrice's lips tightened into a thin smile. "Yes, wonderful. I just hope you two are prepared for the responsibility. Children are a handful, you know." I bit back a retort, determined not to let her ruin this for us. "We'll manage just fine, Beatrice. We've been wanting this for a long time." "Of course you have," she said, patting my arm condescendingly. "Well, I suppose we'll need to start planning the nursery. I have some ideas." "Actually," I interrupted, "Kevin and I would like to do that ourselves. It's our first child, after all." Beatrice's eyes narrowed. "I see. Well, I'm sure you know best." As the weeks passed, my joy at the pregnancy was constantly overshadowed by Beatrice's presence. She seemed to take every opportunity to criticize and undermine me. "Are you sure you should be eating that?" she'd ask as I reached for a cookie. "You don't want to gain too much weight. Or I hope you're not planning on working once the baby comes. Children need their mothers at home." One afternoon, I was folding laundry when Beatrice cornered me in the bedroom. "Lisa, dear," she began, her voice sickly sweet, "I've been thinking, perhaps it would be best if I moved in permanently to help with the baby." I froze, a chill running down my spine. "That's very kind of you, Beatrice, but we'll be fine on our own." She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Oh, you have no idea what you're in for. Trust me, you'll need the help. And who better than an experienced mother?" "I appreciate the offer," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "but Kevin and I want to do this ourselves." Beatrice's face hardened. "I see. Well, don't come crying to me when you're overwhelmed and exhausted. I'm only trying to help. That night, I lay awake long after Kevin had fallen asleep, my hand resting on my growing belly. I should have been excited about the future, but all I felt was dread. The next morning, I woke to the sound of Beatrice's voice, shrill and angry, coming from the kitchen. I crept downstairs, pausing outside the door to listen. "I'm telling you, Kevin, she's not fit to be a mother," Beatrice was saying. "She's too selfish, too career-oriented. The baby will suffer." My heart pounded as I waited for Kevin to defend me, but his response made my blood run cold. "I know, Mom," he sighed. "I'm worried too. Maybe you're right about moving in." I stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth to stifle a sob. This was supposed to be the happiest time of our lives, but instead, it felt like everything was falling apart. As I stood there, tears streaming down my face, I made a decision. I couldn't bring my child into this toxic environment. I needed to get out, to find somewhere safe and nurturing for both of us. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and dialed my mother's number. "Mom," I whispered when she answered. "I need your help. I can't stay here anymore." The familiar scent of my mother's lavender-scented candles washed over me as I stepped into my childhood home. My parents' worried faces greeted me, and I felt a wave of relief crash over me. "Oh, sweetheart," Mom said, pulling me into a tight hug. "We're so glad you're here." Dad took my suitcase, his brow furrowed with concern. "Are you sure about this, Lisa? Have you really thought it through?" I nodded, my hand instinctively moving to my swollen belly. "I can't stay there anymore, Dad. It's not good for me or the baby." As we settled in the living room, I recounted the past few months, Beatrice's constant criticism, Kevin's increasing distance, and the suffocating atmosphere that had taken over our home. "I just don't understand," Mom said, shaking her head. "How could Kevin let his mother treat you like that?" I sighed, feeling the weight of disappointment settle on my shoulders. He's always been close to her, but lately, it's like he can't see how toxic she is. Dad leaned forward, his eyes serious. "Lisa, you know you can stay here as long as you need. We'll help you figure this out." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Thanks, Dad. I don't know what to do next." The weeks that followed were a stark contrast to the tension-filled days at my own home. Mom fussed over me, making sure I ate well and rested. Dad spent hours assembling a crib in the spare room, whistling as he worked. But the peace was shattered one afternoon when my phone rang, Kevin's name flashing on the screen. "Where are you?" he demanded, his voice tight with anger. "Mom said you just left without a word." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I'm at my parents'. Kevin, I couldn't stay there anymore. The way your mother treats me, the way you've been acting, it's not healthy for me or the baby." There was a long pause. When Kevin spoke again, his voice was cold. "You're overreacting. Mom's just trying to help. You need to come home now." "No," I said, surprised by the firmness in my voice. "I'm staying here until we can figure this out, without your mother's interference." Kevin's response was cut off by Beatrice's shrill voice in the background. "Is that her? Let me talk to her." Before I could protest, Beatrice was on the line. "Lisa, this is ridiculous. You're upsetting Kevin and endangering your child with this selfish behavior. Come home immediately." I ended the call, my hands shaking. Mom found me a few minutes later, curled up on the bed, sobbing. "Oh, honey," she soothed, stroking my hair. "It's going to be okay." But as the days turned into weeks and Kevin's calls became less frequent and more hostile, I began to wonder if anything would ever be okay again. Then, on a crisp autumn morning, I felt the first contractions. Mom drove me to the hospital, her usual calm demeanor tinged with excitement. "Have you called Kevin?" she asked as we waited for the doctor. I shook my head, guilt and sadness warring inside me. I don't think he'd come anyway." Hours later, as I held my newborn son in my arms, I felt a surge of love and protectiveness unlike anything I'd ever experienced. "Hello, James," I whispered, tracing his tiny features with my finger. "I promise I'll always keep you safe." As James slept in the hospital bassinet beside me, I made a decision. I couldn't go back to that house, to the toxicity and manipulation. My son deserved better. I deserved better. With trembling fingers, I picked up my phone and dialed Kevin's number. It went straight to voicemail. "Kevin," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "I've had the baby, a boy. His name is James. I'm not coming back. I can't expose our son to that environment. If you want to be part of his life, it'll have to be on different terms." As I ended the call, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. I had no idea what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I would do whatever it took to give James the loving, peaceful home he deserved. 6 months had passed since James was born, and I finally felt ready to face Kevin and reclaim my life. With my parents' encouragement and James securely strapped in his car seat, I drove back to the house I once called home. As I pulled into the driveway, my heart raced. The garden I'd lovingly tended was overgrown, and Kevin's car was nowhere in sight. Something felt off. I rang the doorbell, bouncing James gently in my arms. The door swung open, and I found myself face to face with Beatrice. "Well, well," she said, her lips curling into a smirk. "Look who's decided to grace us with her presence." I steeled myself, refusing to be intimidated. "I'm here to see Kevin. Where is he?" Beatrice's eyes narrowed. "Kevin's at work, of course. Unlike some people, he takes his responsibilities seriously." I bit back a retort, reminding myself I was here for James's sake. "May we come in? I'd like to wait for him." She hesitated, then stepped aside with a dramatic sigh. "I suppose I can't deny a grandmother time with her grandson." As I entered, my jaw dropped. The house had been completely transformed. My carefully chosen decor was gone, replaced by Beatrice's gaudy taste. Family photos that once lined the walls had vanished, supplanted by portraits of Beatrice and Kevin. What happened here?" I stammered. Beatrice's smile was triumphant. "Oh, just a little redecorating. The place needed a woman's touch, you know?" I felt like I'd stepped into a parallel universe. This couldn't be happening. "Where are all our things? Our photos?" "Packed away," she said dismissively. Kevin agreed it was time for a change. I sank onto the unfamiliar couch, clutching James close. This was worse than I'd imagined. It wasn't just the house. It felt like my entire life had been erased. Hours ticked by, filled with Beatrice's thinly veiled insults and attempts to take James from me. When Kevin finally walked through the door, the look of shock on his face mirrored my own from earlier. "Lisa?" he said, his voice a mix of surprise and something else I couldn't quite place. "What are you doing here?" Before I could respond, Beatrice swooped in. "Kevin, darling, look who's decided to pay us a visit, and she's brought little James." Kevin's eyes darted between us, uncertainty clear in his expression. I stood, holding James protectively. "Kevin, we need to talk," I said firmly. "Alone." Beatrice bristled. "Anything you have to say can be said in front of me. I'm family, after all." "Mom," Kevin said, his voice strained. "Please, give us a moment." As Beatrice reluctantly left the room, I turned to Kevin. "What's going on here? Why is your mother living in our house? And where are all our things?" Kevin ran a hand through his hair, looking anywhere but at me. "Lisa, Things have changed. Mom needed a place to stay, and well, you weren't here." "I wasn't here because I couldn't stay in this toxic environment," I exclaimed, causing James to whimper. I lowered my voice, rocking him gently. "Kevin, this isn't right. We need to figure this out, for James' sake if nothing else." Kevin's face hardened. "Maybe if you hadn't run away, we wouldn't be in this situation." His words hit me like a slap. "Run away? I left to protect our child, Kevin. I gave you a chance to be part of his life, but you chose your mother over us." "That's not fair," he protested weakly. "No, what's not fair is coming home to find I've been erased from my own life," I shot back. "We need to make a decision, Kevin. Right now. Are you going to be a father and a husband, or are you going to keep being your mother's son?" The silence that followed was deafening. Kevin's eyes darted towards the door where Beatrice had disappeared, then back to James and me. In that moment, I saw the man I married, warring with the son Beatrice had molded. I need time to think," he finally said. I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. "Fine. Think. But know this, Kevin. I won't wait forever. James and I deserve better than this." As I walked out the door, James cradled against my chest, I realized the decision might already have been made for us. The question was, did I have the strength to accept it and move forward on my own? A week after my confrontation with Kevin, I received a text message that made my blood run cold. "We need to talk. Come to the house tomorrow at 10 a.m., Kevin." I spent the night tossing and turning, my mind racing with possibilities. Was Kevin finally ready to choose us over his mother, or was this the beginning of the end? The next morning, I arrived at the house with James, my heart pounding. As I walked up the driveway, I noticed Kevin's car was gone, but Beatrice's was there. A sense of dread washed over me. I rang the doorbell and Beatrice answered, her face a mask of false sympathy. "Oh, Lisa, come in, dear. Kevin's just stepped out for a moment." As I entered the living room, I froze. Scattered across the coffee table were stacks of papers, legal documents. My eyes caught phrases like custody agreement and division of assets. "What is this?" I demanded, clutching James closer to my chest. Beatrice's smile was cold. "Kevin's decided it's time to make things official. He's filing for divorce." The room spun around me. "No," I whispered. "He wouldn't do this without talking to me first." "Oh, but he has," Beatrice said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "He's realized what's best for everyone, especially little James." At the mention of my son's name, I snapped back to reality. "What do you mean?" Beatrice picked up one of the documents. "Kevin's seeking full custody. After all, a child needs stability, and you've been, well, let's say unreliable." Rage boiled up inside me. Unreliable? I left to protect my son from this toxic environment. "Where's Kevin? I need to speak with him now." As if on cue, the front door opened, and Kevin walked in. His face was a mixture of guilt and determination. "Lisa," he said, avoiding my eyes, "I see Mom's told you about the papers." I marched up to him, James still in my arms. "How could you do this, Kevin? How could you take our son away from me?" Kevin's jaw clenched. "It's for the best, Lisa. You're not stable enough to raise him on your own." "Not stable?" I nearly shouted, causing James to whimper. I lowered my voice, rocking him gently. "I'm the one who's been there for him every day. I'm the one who's been protecting him from this madness." Beatrice stepped between us. Now, let's not make a scene. Kevin's made his decision. It's time for you to leave, Lisa, and leave James here where he belongs." Something inside me snapped. I took a step back, my eyes darting between Kevin and Beatrice. "No," I said, my voice steady and firm. "No, I won't let you do this." Kevin reached for James. "Lisa, don't make this harder than it needs to be." I dodged his grasp, backing towards the door. "You want to take my son? You'll have to go through me first." Beatrice's face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful little—" "Enough!" I shouted, surprising even myself with the force of my voice. "I'm leaving now with my son. If you want to fight me, Kevin, we'll do it in court. But I promise you, I will not let you or your mother destroy our family without a fight." As I turned to leave, Kevin called out, his voice wavering. "Lisa, please, think about what you're doing." I paused at the door, looking back at the man I once loved, now a stranger to me. "I am thinking, Kevin. For the first time in years, I'm thinking clearly. And I'm choosing my son over your mother's manipulation. I'm choosing myself." With that, I walked out, slamming the door behind me. As I buckled James into his car seat, my hands shaking, I knew I had just made the most important decision of my life. The road ahead would be difficult, but I was ready to fight for what mattered most, my son and my dignity. I started the car, my resolve strengthening with each passing moment. It was time to reclaim my life, and I knew exactly where to start. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I should have called long ago. "Hello, is this the office of Johnson & Associates Family Law? I need to speak with a divorce attorney immediately." The day I filed for divorce felt like the end and the beginning of everything. My hands shook as I signed the papers, but my resolve was ironclad. As I left the lawyer's office, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, only to be replaced by a new one, the fight that lay ahead. I wasn't prepared for Kevin's response. Instead of contesting the divorce, he agreed almost immediately. His eagerness to end our marriage cut deeper than I expected, but it was his counter-proposal that truly blindsided me. "He wants what?" I gasped, staring at my lawyer in disbelief. She sighed, pushing the document across the desk. "Mr. Thompson is requesting primary custody of James, with you having visitation rights every other weekend." The room spun around me. That's insane. I'm James's primary caregiver. I'm the one who's been there for him every day." "I know, Lisa," my lawyer said gently, "but Mr. Thompson is claiming that your departure from the marital home demonstrates instability. He's painting you as unstable and unreliable." Anger surged through me. Unstable. I left to protect my son from a toxic environment. How dare he twist that against me? As we strategized our response, a sickening realization dawned on me. This had Beatrice written all over it. She was orchestrating this entire charade, using Kevin as her puppet. The next few weeks were a blur of depositions, court appearances, and sleepless nights. I fought with everything I had, but it felt like swimming against a riptide. Kevin had resources I couldn't match. Beatrice's money, her connections, her ruthless determination to win at any cost. The final blow came on a rainy Tuesday morning. I sat in the courtroom, my parents on either side of me as the judge delivered his ruling. After careful consideration of all evidence presented, this court grants temporary primary custody of James Thompson to the father, Kevin Thompson, with the mother, Lisa Thompson, granted visitation every other weekend and 1 evening per week. The words hit me like a physical blow. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could see was Beatrice's triumphant smirk from across the courtroom. As we left the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Beatrice, ever the opportunist, stepped forward. "We're just so relieved," she said, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "All we want is what's best for little James. It's such a shame his mother couldn't provide a stable environment." Something inside me snapped. I lunged forward, my fist connecting with Beatrice's jaw before I even realized what I was doing. The crowd gasped, cameras flashed, and just like that I had given them exactly what they wanted, proof of my instability. The next day, my face was plastered across local news channels. "Unstable mother assaults grandmother in custody battle," the headlines screamed. I sat in my parents' living room, James clutched tightly to my chest, watching my life unravel on national television. "Oh, honey," my mom said, her voice breaking, "what are we going to do?" I looked down at James, his innocent eyes gazing up at me, and felt a fierce primal love surge through me. In that moment, I knew I would move heaven and earth for him. "We fight," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We fight with everything we have." But as I said the words, doubt crept in. How could I fight against this? How could I prove I was a good mother when everything seemed stacked against me? As if sensing my distress, James reached up and touched my cheek. His tiny gesture of love broke something inside me. Tears streamed down my face as I held him close, wondering how I could possibly let him go. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly, counting down the hours until I had to hand my son over to Kevin and Beatrice. With each passing minute, the weight of my situation pressed down on me, threatening to crush me entirely. I had never felt so alone, so defeated. But as I looked into James's eyes, I knew I couldn't give up. Not now, not ever. Whatever it took, I would find a way to keep my son and reclaim my life. The question was, how? The alarm blared at 5 a.m., jolting me awake. I didn't need it. I'd barely slept. Today was the day I'd start my new job, my first step towards reclaiming my life and fighting for James. As I got ready, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me was a far cry from the broken shell I'd been just weeks ago. Determination blazed in my eyes. I was done being a victim. "You've got this, Lisa," I whispered to my reflection. I dropped James off at my parents' house, kissing his chubby cheeks. "Mommy loves you, sweetheart. I'm doing this for us." The marketing firm was a whirlwind of activity. My new boss, Sarah, was impressed by my eagerness to learn and take on extra tasks. "Keep this up," she said, "and you'll go far here." For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. I could do this. I could build a stable life for James and me. But my newfound confidence was shattered when I received a call from my lawyer during lunch. "Lisa, we have a problem," she said, her voice tense. "Kevin's filed a motion to reduce your visitation rights. He's claiming your new job interferes with James's routine." The world tilted on its axis. "What? But I'm working to provide for James. How can they use that against me?" "I'm sorry, Lisa. Beatrice has hired a high-powered legal team. They're pulling out all the stops." I ended the call, my hands shaking. How much more could they take from me? That evening, as I picked up James from my parents, I noticed my father's worried expression. "What's wrong, Dad?" He hesitated. "Lisa, honey, there's something you should see." He handed me his tablet, open to a local news website. My heart stopped as I read the headline, "Mother in Custody Battle Accused of Neglect." The article was filled with lies and half-truths, painting me as an unfit mother who chose career over child. Beatrice's influence was clear in every word. "This can't be happening," I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. My mother wrapped her arms around me. "We'll fight this, sweetheart. We're with you all the way." But as the days passed, the situation only worsened. Rumors spread at work. co-workers whispering behind my back. Sarah called me into her office, her face grave. "Lisa, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to let you go. The negative publicity." I nodded numbly, gathering my things. Another piece of my life, gone. The final blow came a week later. I arrived at Kevin's house for my visitation, only to find Beatrice waiting for me. "I'm afraid James isn't feeling well," she said, false concern dripping from her voice. "It's best if he stays home today." "You can't do this," I said, my voice breaking. "He's my son." Beatrice's eyes hardened. "A son you abandoned. Face it, Lisa, you've lost. It's time to walk away." I stumbled back to my car, sobs racking my body. How had it come to this? I'd lost my husband, my job, and now they were trying to take my son. As I drove aimlessly, my mind raced. I couldn't give up. I wouldn't. But how could I fight against such overwhelming odds? Suddenly, a memory surfaced. Something Kevin had once mentioned about Beatrice's past, a secret she'd been desperate to keep hidden. I pulled over, my heart pounding. It was a long shot, but it might be my only chance. With trembling fingers, I dialed a number I never thought I'd call. "Hello?" A gruff voice answered. I took a deep breath. "Dennis? This is Lisa, Kevin's wife. I need your help." There was a long pause. Then, "I've been waiting for this call. It's time Beatrice faced the truth." As I hung up, a mix of hope and fear surged through me. I was about to unleash a storm that could destroy everything. But for James, I'd risk it all. Tomorrow I'd make my final stand. Win or lose, nothing would ever be the same again. The doorbell rang, shattering the tense silence in my parents' living room. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. Dennis stood beside me, a folder clutched tightly in his hands. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice gruff but kind. I nodded, my heart pounding. "As I'll ever be." I opened the door to find Kevin and Beatrice, their faces a mix of confusion and anger. "What's the meaning of this, Lisa?" Kevin demanded. "And why is he here?" He glared at Dennis. "Please, come in," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "There's something you both need to hear." As we gathered in the living room, the tension was palpable. Beatrice's eyes darted between Dennis and me, a flicker of fear crossing her face. "Kevin," Dennis began, "there's no easy way to say this. I'm not your biological father." The room fell silent. Kevin's face drained of color. "What? That's impossible." Beatrice leapt to her feet. "How dare you? This is preposterous." But Dennis was already pulling documents from his folder. "I had a DNA test done years ago, Beatrice. I know the truth. Kevin's real father is that man you had an affair with, your boss at the time." Kevin turned to his mother, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Mom, is this true?" Beatrice's carefully constructed facade crumbled. I never meant for you to find out. I was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" Kevin's voice cracked. "By lying to me my entire life? By driving away everyone who ever cared about me?" As the truth unfolded, I watched the realization dawn on Kevin's face. Every manipulation, every lie Beatrice had told came crashing down around them. "All this time," Kevin whispered, "you've been controlling my life, my relationships. You drove Lisa away, tried to take my son from her, and it was all based on a lie?" Beatrice reached for him, but he recoiled. "Kevin, darling, everything I did was for you. I love you." "Love?" Kevin scoffed. "This isn't love, Mom. This is obsession." He turned to me, his eyes filled with remorse. "Lisa, I'm so sorry. I've been such a fool." I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. "We've all been fooled, Kevin, but it's not too late to make things right." Beatrice, seeing her control slipping away, made one last desperate attempt. "You can't believe them, Kevin. They're trying to turn you against me. I'm the only one who truly cares about you." But Kevin stood firm. "No, Mom, it's over. I want you out of my life, out of Lisa's life, and out of James's life. For good." As Beatrice's world collapsed around her, I felt no joy, only relief. The battle was over, but the scars would take time to heal. In the days that followed, Kevin and I began the slow process of rebuilding trust. We agreed to co-parent James, putting his needs first. The custody arrangement was revised, giving me equal time with my son. As I tucked James into bed one night, Kevin watching from the doorway, I realized how far we'd come. We weren't the same people who had started this journey, but perhaps we were better for it. "Lisa," Kevin said softly as we left James's room, "I know I have a lot to make up for, but I want you to know I'm committed to being a better father and a better man." I smiled, feeling a glimmer of the love we once shared. "One day at a time, Kevin. We'll figure it out together. As I lay in bed that night, reflecting on the tumultuous path that had led me here, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had faced my greatest fears, stood up to my tormentors, and emerged stronger. I thought of the woman I was at the beginning of this ordeal, scared, uncertain, and feeling powerless. Now I was resilient, confident, and in control of my own destiny. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew I had the strength to face them. For myself, for James, and for the family we were rebuilding. One truth, one day at a time.
My name is Isadora Calloway, but everyone calls me Izzy. I've spent my life chasing flavors and writing about them, turning my mother's passion for food into a career that would have made her proud. Little did I know that my greatest challenge wouldn't come from a bitter herb or an overcooked steak, but from the family I married into. You know, Izzy, not everyone gets to turn their passion into a livelihood, Bernie said, her eyes gleaming with a hint of something darker. It must be nice to have all this success, and to share it with family. I forced a smile, my fork hovering over the perfectly seared scallop on my plate. We were seated at the trendiest new restaurant in town, a place I was supposed to be reviewing. Instead, I found myself navigating the minefield of my mother-in-law's backhanded compliments. "I'm very fortunate," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. My mother always said that food brings people together. I like to think I'm carrying on her legacy. Thatch, my husband, squeezed my hand under the table. "And you're doing a fantastic job, honey. Mom, you should read Izzy's latest review. It's brilliant." Bernie's smile tightened. "Oh, I'm sure it is. Thatcher always did have excellent taste." I caught the double meaning in her words, a familiar twist of the knife that I'd grown accustomed to over the past year of marriage. Across the table, Eldon, my father-in-law, remained silent, his attention fixed on the wine list. "So, Izzy," Bernie continued, leaning forward conspiratorially, "I was thinking, with your connections in the food world, surely you could help Eldon and me get a reservation at Le Petit Cho? It's impossible to get in, but I'm sure they'd make an exception for family." I felt my jaw clench. "I'm sorry, Bernie, but I make it a point never to use my position for personal favors. It wouldn't be ethical." "Oh, come now," she laughed, waving her hand dismissively. "What's the point of success if you can't help out the people closest to you?" Thatch cleared his throat. "Mom, Izzy's right. Her integrity is important to her career." Of course," Bernie backpedaled, but the glint in her eye told me this wouldn't be the last I heard of it. As the evening wore on, I found myself increasingly on edge. Every comment from Bernie seemed loaded, every glance calculating. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being sized up, measured against some invisible standard I could never hope to meet. "Tell me, Izzy," Bernie said as dessert arrived, "how did your mother feel about you marrying our Thatcher? I'm sure she must have been thrilled to see her daughter so well settled." The question hit me like a sucker punch. My mother had passed away long before I met Thatch, a fact Bernie knew all too well. I think she would have been happy to see me happy. I managed my voice tight. Thatch jumped in, his voice overly cheerful. "Hey, why don't we talk about something else? Dad, didn't you mention a new golf club you were trying out?" But the damage was done. As we left the restaurant, Bernie's parting words echoed in my ears. "We must do this again soon, darling. After all, we're family now." On the drive home, Thatch reached for my hand. "I'm sorry about my mom. You know how she can be." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The truth was, I didn't know how Bernie could be. Not really. But I was beginning to suspect that the charming, supportive in-laws I thought I'd married into were nothing more than an illusion. As we pulled into our driveway, I made a silent promise to myself. I would navigate this family dynamic, protect my career, and honor my mother's memory. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was stepping onto a battlefield I hadn't even known existed. Little did I know, this was just the beginning. The subtle jabs, the veiled insults, the constant pressure, it was all leading somewhere. And I had a sinking feeling that before long, I'd be forced to choose between the family I'd married into and the life I'd worked so hard to build. The weeks following that tense dinner flew by in a whirlwind of deadlines and restaurant openings. I threw myself into my work, grateful for the distraction from the nagging doubts about my in-laws. Thatch, ever the charmer, seemed determined to make up for his mother's behavior with grand gestures and surprise date nights. It was on one of these nights, as we strolled along the riverfront after a cozy dinner at our favorite bistro, that Thatch suddenly dropped to one knee. My heart leapt into my throat as he pulled out a small velvet box. "Izzy," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "you've brought so much flavor to my life. Will you marry me?" The ring was simple but elegant, nothing like the gaudy rocks Bernie favored. It was perfect. I said yes through tears of joy, truly believing at that moment that our love could overcome any obstacle. The wedding was a small affair, much to Bernie's barely concealed disappointment. "Are you sure you don't want something grander?" she'd asked, eyeing the modest venue we'd chosen. But Thatch had backed me up, insisting that this was exactly what we wanted. As we settled into married life, I found myself noticing little quirks about Thatch I'd overlooked before. The way he'd leave his wet towels on the bed, or how he'd conveniently forget to pick up groceries on his way home. Small annoyances, really, but they began to stack up. "Honey," I said one evening, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice, "could you please remember to put your dishes in the dishwasher? I'm not your maid." Thatch looked up from his phone, surprise evident on his face. "Oh, sorry, babe. I didn't even notice. Mom, always." He trailed off, but the damage was done. Of course, Bernie had always cleaned up after him. I bit back a retort, reminding myself that marriage was about compromise and growth. Despite these minor hiccups, I was hopeful about our future. Thatch was supportive of my career, always eager to hear about my latest reviews, and even offering to proofread my articles. We were building a life together, one meal and shared laugh at a time. Then came the weekend that changed everything. We'd planned a romantic getaway to a quaint bed and breakfast upstate, famous for its farm-to-table cuisine. I was looking forward to disconnecting from the world and reconnecting with my husband. As we pulled up to the charming Victorian house, I felt my phone buzz. A text from Thatch's number, but it wasn't from him. "Surprise, darlings. We thought we'd join you for a family weekend. See you soon. Bernie." I turned to Thatch, my stomach sinking. "Did you know about this?" He had the grace to look sheepish. "Mom called this morning. I thought it might be nice." Before I could respond, a familiar SUV pulled up behind us. Bernie emerged, arms wide, Eldon trailing behind with their luggage. "Izzy, darling," Bernie trilled, air kissing my cheeks. What a coincidence that we all chose the same weekend getaway. I forced a smile, knowing full well this was no coincidence. As Bernie launched into a monologue about the dreadful traffic and how quaint everything looked, I caught Thatch's eye. He mouthed a silent sorry, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't nearly as bothered by this intrusion as I was. The weekend stretched on endlessly. Every meal became a stage for Bernie to critique the food, comparing it unfavorably to restaurants she'd visited in Europe. Eldon mostly kept quiet, occasionally nodding in agreement with his wife. By Sunday morning, my nerves were frayed. I'd come here to relax and instead found myself constantly on edge, mediating between Bernie's demands and the increasingly flustered B&B staff. As we packed to leave, Thatch tried to smooth things over. "It wasn't so bad, was it? Mom and Dad really enjoyed spending time with us." I zipped my suitcase with more force than necessary. "Thatch, this was supposed to be our weekend. Don't you see how intrusive this was?" He shrugged, that boyish grin I once found so charming now grating on my nerves. "They're family, Izzy. That's what family does." As we drove home, Bernie's voice echoing from the car behind us as she called to make plans for next weekend. I couldn't shake the feeling that the harmony I'd believed in was nothing more than an illusion. And for the first time since our wedding, I wondered if Thatch and I were really on the same page after all. The weeks following our ill-fated getaway were tense. Thatch and I danced around the subject of his parents, neither of us willing to ignite the powder keg of resentment that had been steadily building. I threw myself into my work, using the excuse of deadlines to avoid family dinners and weekend brunches. It was during one of these late nights at the office that I decided to go over our finances. With a big review coming up, I wanted to make sure we were on track for our savings goals. As I logged into our joint account, my heart nearly stopped. The balance was far lower than it should have been. Frowning, I scrolled through the recent transactions. Expensive restaurants, high-end boutiques, a golf club membership renewal. None of these were expenses Thatch and I had discussed. My hands shaking, I dialed Thatch's number. "Hey, can you explain these charges on our account?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a long pause on the other end. "Oh, those," Thatch said, his voice unnaturally light. "Mom and Dad were in a bit of a tight spot, so I helped them out." "It's no big deal, Izzy." "No big deal?" I repeated, incredulous. "Thatch, this is thousands of dollars. From our joint account." "They're family," he said, as if that explained everything. "We can afford it. Your last book advance more than covers it." I felt as if I'd been slapped. My advance? That was for our future, Thatch.
For us.
Not for your parents' lavish lifestyle. "Look, can we talk about this when I get home?" Thatch sighed. "I'm sure we can work it out." But when Thatch arrived home, Bernie and Eldon were in tow. Surprise. Bernie trilled, waltzing into our living room like she owned the place. "We thought we'd treat you to dinner to thank you for your generosity." I shot Thatch a look of disbelief, but he just shrugged helplessly. Dinner was a tense affair. Bernie regaled us with tales of her latest shopping spree and Eldon's new set of golf clubs, each word like a dagger to my heart. I pushed my food around the plate, appetite gone. "Izzy, darling, you've barely touched your food," Bernie noted, her tone dripping with faux concern. "Is everything all right?" I set down my fork with a clatter. "Actually, no. It's not all right. I just found out that my hard-earned money is being used to finance your lifestyle without my knowledge or consent." The table fell silent. Thatch looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. Bernie's eyes narrowed. "Now, Izzy, let's not be dramatic. We're family. Families support each other. Isn't that right, Thatcher?" Thatch nodded weakly. "Mom's right, Izzy. It's what families do." I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. "Excuse me," I muttered, fleeing to the bedroom. Later that night, after Bernie and Eldon had finally left, Thatch tried to smooth things over. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you," he said, his voice soft. "I just didn't want to worry you. It won't happen again, I promise." I wanted to believe him. I desperately wanted to believe that this was just a misunderstanding, that we could move past it. But as I lay awake that night, Thatch's gentle snores beside me, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. The next morning, I woke up early and made my way to the kitchen. As I sipped my coffee, staring out at the dawning sky, I thought about my mother. What would Vivian Calloway say if she could see me now? "Trust your instincts, Izzy girl," I could almost hear her say. "You've got good taste in food and in life. Don't let anyone spoil that." With a heavy heart, I realized that the cracks in the foundation of my marriage weren't just cracks anymore. They were chasms, widening with each passing day. And for the first time, I allowed myself to wonder if they were too wide to bridge. As I heard Thatch stirring in the bedroom, I steeled myself for the conversation to come. It was time to face the truth, no matter how unpalatable it might be. The illusion of harmony had shattered, and I was left to pick up the pieces of the life I thought I knew. The weeks following the financial revelation were a delicate dance of forced smiles and tense silences. Thatch made a show of being more attentive, bringing me flowers and suggesting date nights. But the trust that had been broken wasn't so easily repaired. I threw myself into planning a much-needed getaway. A quaint coastal town was hosting a seafood festival, and I'd been invited to be a guest judge. It was the perfect opportunity to clear my head and focus on my work. "I've booked us a charming little bed and breakfast," I told Thatch over dinner. "Just us, the ocean, and some of the best seafood on the coast. No distractions." Thatch's face lit up. "Sounds perfect, Izzy. I can't wait." For a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this trip was exactly what we needed to reconnect. That hope was short-lived. The day before our departure, Thatch's phone buzzed during breakfast. His face paled as he read the message. "Everything okay?" I asked, already dreading the answer. Thatch cleared his throat.
Funny story.
Mom and Dad were planning a trip to the same town this weekend. They thought it might be fun, if we all went together. The spoon I was holding clattered against my bowl. You're joking, right? But of course, he wasn't. Bernie had somehow caught wind of our plans and, in her typical fashion, had inserted herself and Eldon into them. I told them it wasn't a good idea, Thatch said weakly, but I could see the lie in his eyes. The drive to the coast was tense, with Bernie and Eldon following close behind in their ostentatious SUV. Every few minutes, Bernie would call Thatch, suggesting stops or asking about our itinerary. By the time we reached the bed and breakfast, my nerves were frayed. To my horror, I discovered that Bernie had taken the liberty of upgrading our reservations to a larger vacation home that could accommodate all of us. Surprise! Bernie trilled as we pulled up. Isn't this so much better? Now, we can all be together. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Thatch, ever the peacekeeper, just shrugged helplessly. The seafood festival, which I had been looking forward to for months, became a nightmare. Bernie insisted on accompanying me to every event, offering loud opinions on each dish and making a spectacle of our family outing. Oh, Izzy's a food critic, she'd announce to anyone who would listen. But of course, I taught her everything she knows about fine dining. I watched helplessly as my professional connections gave me pitying looks, clearly put off by Bernie's overbearing presence. The final straw came during the judging of the festival's signature dish. As I sat with my fellow judges, carefully tasting and evaluating each entry, I heard a commotion from the crowd. "Excuse me, coming through. Family of the judge here." To my horror, Bernie was pushing her way to the front, Eldon and a mortified Thatch in tow. "Izzy, darling," she called out, waving frantically. "Don't forget to save some for us. We're family after all." The other judges exchanged glances, and I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. The crowd fell silent as I marched over to where Thatch stood. "We need to talk," I hissed, grabbing his arm and pulling him away from his parents.
Now.
Once we were out of earshot, I let loose. "This has to stop, Thatch. Your mother is ruining my career, my reputation, and our marriage. You need to set some boundaries or, I swear dash." "Or what?" Thatch interrupted, a hint of defiance in his voice. "They're my parents, Izzy. I can't just cut them out of our lives." I stared at him, the realization hitting me like a wave. This wasn't just about Bernie and Eldon. This was about Thatch's inability, or unwillingness, to stand up for me, for us. As I walked back to the judging table, leaving Thatch standing there, I felt a strange mix of clarity and despair. The man I had married, the life I thought we were building together, it was all unraveling before my eyes. And I wasn't sure if I had the strength or even the desire to try and stitch it back together. The weeks following the disastrous seafood festival were a blur of tense silences and half-hearted attempts at reconciliation. Thatch and I tiptoed around each other, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy between us. I threw myself into my work, grateful for the distraction it provided from my crumbling personal life. It was during this time that I received an invitation to review Le Jardin, the most exclusive new restaurant in the city. This wasn't just any review. It was a make-or-break moment for my career. The entire culinary world would be watching, waiting to see what Isadora Calloway had to say about the most anticipated opening of the year. I arrived at Le Jardin early, notebook in hand, ready to lose myself in the experience. The maitre d' led me to a secluded table, perfect for observing the room without drawing attention to myself. As I settled in, I felt a familiar sense of calm wash over me. This was my element, where I could forget about Bernie, Thatch, and all the complications they brought into my life. The first course had just arrived, a delicate amuse-bouche that promised to set the tone for the evening, when I heard a commotion at the entrance. "But surely you must have a table for us. Don't you know who we are?" My blood ran cold. I'd recognize that shrill voice anywhere. "Bernie." I sank lower in my seat, praying they wouldn't spot me. But of course, luck wasn't on my side. "Izzy, darling." Bernie's voice cut through the refined murmur of the dining room. What a delightful surprise. I looked up to see Bernie sashaying towards me, Eldon, and a mortified-looking Thatch in tow. The other diners were starting to stare, whispers rippling through the room. "Bernie," I hissed, trying to keep my voice low. "What are you doing here?" She waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, we heard you were reviewing this charming little place and thought we'd join you. After all, what's a family for if not to support each other?" Before I could protest, Bernie had signaled a waiter. "We'll need 3 more place settings here." Chop chop. The waiter looked at me uncertainly. I could feel the eyes of the entire restaurant on us, including those of the head chef who had emerged from the kitchen to see what the commotion was about. "Bernie, please," I pleaded. "This is a professional engagement. I can't have you here." But Bernie was already settling into a chair, examining the menu with a critical eye. "Nonsense, darling. Who better to assist you than your loving family? Now, let's see what overpriced morsels they're serving tonight." As the evening progressed, my worst fears were realized. Bernie loudly critiqued each dish, making outrageous demands and sending back perfectly prepared plates. Eldon, as usual, said little but nodded along with his wife's every pronouncement. Thatch alternated between looking apologetic and trying to placate his mother. I sat there, mortified, watching my professional reputation crumble before my eyes. The other diners were openly staring now, some even taking out their phones to record the spectacle. Finally, as Bernie launched into a tirade about the wine list, something inside me snapped. Enough. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. The room fell silent. "Bernie, Eldon, I need you to leave."
Now.
Bernie's eyes widened in mock hurt. "But Izzy, we're only trying to help. After all, you're part of our family now." "No," I said, my voice shaking with anger and pent-up frustration. "I'm not part of your family. I'm Isadora Calloway, food critic and writer. And you've just ruined the most important review of my career." Bernie's face darkened. "Now see here, young lady. We've given you everything, connections, opportunities, our darling Thatcher. You owe us dash." "I owe you nothing," I interrupted, surprising even myself with the venom in my voice. "Thatch, I'm sorry, but if you can't see what's happening here, then maybe we need to reevaluate more than just this evening." With that, I grabbed my purse and stormed out of the restaurant, leaving behind a stunned silence. As the cool night air hit my face, I felt a strange mix of despair and liberation. I had no idea what would happen next, but I knew one thing for certain. Things could never go back to the way they were. The aftermath of the Le Jardin disaster was swift and merciless. My inbox overflowed with concerned emails from editors and fellow critics, while social media buzzed with gossip about the Calloway family meltdown. I'd become a spectacle, my carefully cultivated reputation tarnished by one disastrous evening. I spent the next few days holed up in my office, ignoring Thatch's calls and Bernie's increasingly aggressive voicemails. The weight of everything, the manipulation, the betrayal, the constant undermining of my career, pressed down on me, threatening to suffocate me. It was on the 3rd day of my self-imposed exile that Thatch finally cornered me. He stood in the doorway of my office, his usually charming smile replaced by a look of desperation. "Izzy, we need to talk," he said, his voice soft but insistent. I looked up from my laptop, feeling a mix of anger and exhaustion. "I think we're well past talking, Thatch." He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "Please, just hear me out. What happened at Le Jardin? It wasn't supposed to go like that. Mom just wanted to dash." "To what?" I interrupted, my voice sharp. "To humiliate me? To sabotage my career? Or just to remind me once again that in your family's eyes, I'll never be good enough?" Thatch's face fell. "That's not true, Izzy. They love you. We all do." I laughed bitterly. "Love? Is that what you call it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks a lot like control." There was a long pause, the tension in the room palpable. Finally, Thatch spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Mom.
She's always been involved in my life.
In all our lives. She just wants what's best for us." And there it was, the admission I'd been waiting for, dreading, and somehow expecting all at once. What's best for us? I repeated, my voice trembling with anger. Was it best for us when she manipulated our wedding plans? When she crashed our honeymoon? When she undermined every decision we've made as a couple? Thatch looked away, unable to meet my gaze. She means well, Izzy. She's just protective. Protective? I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. Thatch, she's destroying us. Can't you see that? He remained silent, and in that silence, I found my answer. You know what? I said, a strange calm settling over me. I think I finally understand.
It's not just about Bernie. It's about you, Thatch.
You've never been able to stand up to her, to choose our marriage over her demands. Thatch's head snapped up, his eyes wide. That's not fair, Izzy. I love you. I chose you when I married you. I shook my head, feeling a mixture of sadness and relief.
No, Thatch.
You didn't choose me. You chose the idea of me, the version of a wife that fit into your mother's grand plan. But that's not who I am. It's not who I want to be. I moved past him, heading for the door. He reached out, grabbing my arm. Where are you going? I gently, but firmly removed his hand. I'm leaving, Thatch. I can't do this anymore. I won't be a pawn in Bernie's games, and I won't spend my life competing with your mother for your loyalty. Izzy, please, he pleaded, his voice cracking. We can fix this. I'll talk to Mom. I'll set boundaries. Just don't go. For a moment, I wavered. The love I still felt for him, the life we'd planned together, it all hung in the balance. But then I remembered my mother's words. Trust your instincts, Izzy girl. You've got good taste in food and in life. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I knew I had to do. I'm sorry, Thatch. But this isn't something you can fix with a conversation or a promise. This is about who we are fundamentally. And I've realized that who I am doesn't fit in your family's world. With that, I walked out of the office, out of our home, and into an uncertain future. As I stepped onto the street, I felt a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. For the first time in years, I was free from the suffocating expectations of the Whitmore family. I had no idea what came next, but I knew one thing for certain. Whatever it was, it would be on my own terms. And somehow, that thought tasted sweeter than any dish I'd ever reviewed. The weeks following my departure from Thatch and the Whitmore family were a blur of hotel rooms and sleepless nights. I threw myself into my work, desperate to salvage what was left of my career after the Le Jardin fiasco. But as I sat in front of my laptop, staring at the blinking cursor, I realized I had a unique opportunity. I'd always prided myself on my honest, no-holds-barred reviews. Why should this be any different? With trembling fingers, I began to type. In the world of haute cuisine, appearances can be deceiving. A beautifully plated dish might hide a bland interior, just as a seemingly perfect family can mask a toxic core. I poured my heart into the article, weaving my personal experience into a broader critique of the superficial, status-obsessed culture that Bernie and her ilk represented. I didn't name names, but anyone who knew the players would recognize the thinly veiled references. When I hit publish, I felt a mixture of terror and exhilaration. There was no going back now. The response was immediate and overwhelming. My inbox flooded with messages from readers who saw themselves in my words, who had struggled with overbearing in-laws or felt trapped in a world of keeping up appearances. But there were also angry missives from Bernie's friends, thinly veiled threats about ruining my career. I ignored them all, focusing instead on my next piece. This time, I took aim at the exclusive supper clubs and charity galas that Bernie had always lorded over me. I exposed the hollow philanthropy, the backroom deals, the way these events were less about doing good and more about being seen. With each article, I felt stronger, more like myself. The Izzy that my mother had raised, fierce, independent, unafraid to speak truth to power. It was after my third expose that I received a call from an unknown number. Izzy. Thatch's voice was hesitant, almost unrecognizable. We need to talk. We met at a small cafe, far from the upscale restaurants we used to frequent. Thatch looked haggard, his usually impeccable appearance disheveled. Your articles, he began, not meeting my eyes. They've caused quite a stir. I sip my coffee, waiting. Mom's friends, they're not inviting her to events anymore. Dad's golf club membership has been revoked. They're saying it's all because of what you wrote. For a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. Then I remembered all the times Bernie had humiliated me, all the ways she had tried to control our lives. I'm sorry if they're hurt, I said, surprised to find I meant it. But I only wrote the truth. Thatch nodded slowly. I know. That's why I wanted to see you. I've been doing a lot of thinking and you were right. About everything. I felt my breath catch. What do you mean? Mom's always controlled everything. My whole life, I've just gone along with it because it was easier. But reading your articles, seeing the effect they've had, I realized I don't want to be part of that world anymore. For the first time since I'd known him, Thatch looked truly vulnerable. I've moved out. I'm staying with a friend, trying to figure out who I am without Mom's influence. I reached out, squeezing his hand. I'm proud of you, Thatch. It's not easy to break free. He smiled sadly. No, it's not. But you showed me it was possible. As we parted ways, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I hadn't set out for revenge, not really. But in finding my voice, in speaking my truth, I had inadvertently brought about a kind of justice. That night, as I sat down to write my next piece, I thought about Bernie and Eldon, about the crumbling facade of their perfect world. I thought about Thatch, taking his first tentative steps towards independence. And I thought about my mother and how proud she would be of the woman I'd become. I began to type, a small smile playing on my lips. The sweet taste of revenge, it turned out, wasn't about destroying others. It was about reclaiming myself, about using my voice to challenge the status quo and maybe, just maybe, inspire others to do the same. As my fingers flew across the keyboard, I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't experienced in years. This was more than just a food column now. This was my chance to make a real difference, to expose the hollow core of a world that prioritized appearance over substance. And I was just getting started. The months following my exposés flew by in a whirlwind of activity. My inbox overflowed with messages from readers, editors, and even a few apologetic notes from Bernie's former social circle. But I paid them little mind. I was too busy pouring my heart and soul into a project that had been simmering in the back of my mind for years. My cookbook, Authentic Flavors, A Journey Through Life and Cuisine, was more than just a collection of recipes. It was a memoir, a tribute to my mother's teachings, and a manifesto for living life on one's own terms. Each recipe came with a story, some bitter, some sweet, but all undeniably mine. As I put the finishing touches on the manuscript, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I'd come. The Izzy who had timidly entered the Whitmore family's orbit seemed like a stranger now. In her place stood a woman who knew her worth, who refused to compromise her values for the sake of appearances. The day my advance copy arrived, I sat at my kitchen table, my own kitchen in my own apartment, and ran my fingers over the embossed cover. I thought of all the meals I'd shared with Thatch, with Bernie and Eldon, always trying to fit into their world. And then I thought of the simple, honest meals my mother used to make, filled with love and free from pretension. I opened the book to the dedication page. To Vivian Calloway, who taught me that the most important ingredient in any dish is authenticity. And to myself, for finally learning that lesson. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Thatch. We'd kept in sporadic contact over the past few months, each of us working on our own journey of self-discovery. Heard about the cookbook. Congratulations, Izzy. You deserve this success. I smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with resentment or bitterness. Thank you, I replied. How are you doing? Better, came his response. Started therapy, trying to figure out who I am without Mom's influence. It's hard, but it feels right. I'm proud of you. I texted back and I meant it. As I set my phone down, I realized that the anger and hurt that had driven me for so long had faded. In its place was a sense of peace, of coming home to myself. The next few weeks were a blur of book signings, interviews, and rave reviews. But the moment that stood out most came during a small, intimate launch party at my favorite local bistro. As I stood addressing the crowd of friends, colleagues, and food lovers, I caught sight of a familiar face in the back. Thatch stood there, a tentative smile on his face. Next to him was a woman I didn't recognize, but the way they leaned into each other spoke volumes. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I felt the last piece fall into place. We nodded at each other, a silent acknowledgement of the journey we'd both undertaken. Food, I said, turning back to the audience, is more than just sustenance. It's a way to connect, to express love, to celebrate our authentic selves. Each dish tells a story of tradition, of innovation, of the hands that prepared it and the hearts it nourishes. I raised my glass. Here's to authentic flavors, in our food and in our lives. May we always have the courage to seek them out, to savor them, and to share them with the world. As applause filled the room, I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. For my mother's wisdom, for the hard lessons I'd learned, for the strength I'd found within myself. Later that night, as I curled up on my couch with a cup of my mother's favorite tea, I opened my cookbook to a random page. The recipe that greeted me was for a simple tomato soup, the first dish my mother had taught me to make. I smiled, remembering her words. Remember, Izzy girl, the secret to a good soup is letting the flavors speak for themselves. No need for fancy tricks or expensive ingredients. Just honesty and love. As I sipped my tea, I realized that I had finally created the recipe for my own life, one built on authenticity, self-respect, and the courage to stand up for what I believed in. And it tasted sweeter than any dish I'd ever critiqued. My name is Ellie. I'm a social worker, the kind who believes in second chances, in the power of redemption. Ironic, isn't it? Given what I'm about to do? My life, until recently, was a carefully constructed tableau of suburban bliss. Loving husband, beautiful home, fulfilling career. A gilded cage, really. And the key holder? My mother-in-law, Judith. Surprise. David grinned, pulling me into the opulent dining room. Crystal chandeliers glittered, casting rainbows across the polished mahogany table set for a feast. Judith, impeccably dressed in a designer gown, raised her champagne flute. We're so thrilled, darling. David tells me you're finally seeing sense about family. My stomach lurched. Family. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. I hadn't told anyone I was pregnant, let alone considering terminating it. David squeezed my hand, oblivious to the silent scream building in my throat. Isn't this wonderful, Ellie? Mother's throwing us a celebration. I forced a smile, my fingers curling around the stem of the champagne flute. It's a surprise, I managed, my voice a strained whisper. Judith's hawk-like gaze settled on my face, a triumphant glint in her eyes. Oh, don't be coy, dear. We all know what this is about. It's about time you embraced your role, your duty. My role. My duty. Judith's favorite words. According to her, my sole purpose in life was to produce an heir for the Vance dynasty. Never mind my career, my aspirations. Those were frivolous pursuits, easily discarded in the face of family obligation. David, bless his oblivious heart, was beaming. He'd always wanted children, a whole brood of them, filling our perfectly manicured lawn with the echoes of laughter. He'd never understand my hesitation, the fear that motherhood would swallow me whole, transforming me into a pale imitation of Judith, obsessed with social status and lineage. Mother insisted on celebrating, David said, his voice laced with pride. He nudged me playfully. She's already planning the nursery. Italian marble, hand-painted murals. My smile tightened. Judith was already decorating a nursery for a child that might not even exist. A wave of nausea washed over me, and I excused myself, rushing to the powder room. I stared at my reflection, the woman staring back a stranger. Pale, wide-eyed, trapped. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to regain my composure. I had to get out of there, away from the suffocating expectations, the veiled threats disguised as well wishes. I returned to the dining room, plastering a smile back on my face. I'm so sorry, I said, feigning a sudden headache. I'm not feeling well. I think I need some fresh air. Judith's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing. Nonsense, dear.
You can't leave now.
We haven't even had dessert yet. I really must, I insisted, my voice trembling slightly. I'll be fine. Just a bit overwhelmed. That's all. I glanced at David, hoping he'd understand, intervene. He frowned, concern etched on his face. Are you sure, Ellie? You look a bit pale. I'm sure, I said, grabbing my purse. I'll see you later. Before anyone could protest, I turned and fled, the weight of Judith's expectations pressing down on me like a physical burden. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I knew this was just the beginning, the first crack in the foundation of my gilded cage. And I had a feeling it wouldn't be long before the whole thing came crashing down. The following morning, the tension from the previous night lingered like a stale perfume. David, ever the peacemaker, tried to bridge the chasm that had opened between his mother and me. Ellie, Mother's just excited, he said, his voice gentle. She wants what's best for us. What's best for us? I repeated, the bitterness seeping into my words. Or what's best for the Vance family legacy? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Don't be like that. She just wants to be involved. Involved? She's trying to orchestrate our lives. I countered, the memory of Judith's triumphant smirk flashing before my eyes. She announced my pregnancy to the world before I even had a chance to process it myself. David looked conflicted, torn between loyalty to his mother and understanding for my feelings. She got carried away, that's all. She means well. I know you believe that, David, I said softly, but sometimes good intentions pave the road to hell. Later that day, my younger sister, Olivia, arrived unannounced, her vibrant energy a stark contrast to the oppressive atmosphere of the Vance mansion. Olivia, a free-spirited artist, was my confidant, the one person who truly understood me. So, spill, she demanded, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. What's the deal with the cryptic phone call? Emergency family summit. Sounds ominous. I poured her a glass of wine, my hands still trembling slightly. I'm pregnant, I whispered, the words heavy with unspoken anxieties. Olivia's face lit up. Ellie, that's amazing. Congratulations. Her enthusiasm felt jarring, a discordant note in the symphony of my unease. It's complicated, I said, the joy of the news overshadowed by Judith's manipulative machinations. Complicated how? Olivia asked, her brow furrowing with concern. I recounted the events of the previous night, Judith's announcement, the suffocating pressure, my own ambivalence about motherhood. Olivia listened intently, her usual carefree demeanor replaced by a thoughtful frown. Judith's always been a piece of work, she said finally, her voice laced with indignation. But this is a new low, even for her. Her validation was a balm to my raw nerves. I feel like I'm losing my mind, Liv. She's making me question everything. Don't let her get to you, Ellie, Olivia said, her voice firm. You're strong, you're capable. Don't let her steal your joy. Over the next few days, Judith's manipulation became more insidious. She dropped seemingly innocent comments about my age, my biological clock, the risks of delaying motherhood. She'd send me articles about the joys of parenting, the fulfillment of raising a family, the emptiness of a childless life. You'll make a wonderful mother, dear, she'd say, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Of course, it's a demanding role. Perhaps you'll need to reconsider your career. Children need their mothers, especially in the early years. Each word, each gesture, was a carefully aimed dart designed to erode my confidence, to make me doubt my own judgment. I found myself withdrawing, isolating myself from David, from Olivia, from the world. I felt like a puppet, my strings being pulled by an unseen hand. One evening, Judith invited me for a girls' night, a rare occurrence that set my teeth on edge. We need to bond, dear, she said, her smile brittle. Mother and daughter. I reluctantly agreed, sensing a trap, but unable to refuse without arousing suspicion. We went to a trendy new restaurant, the air thick with the scent of expensive perfume and simmering resentment. Judith ordered a bottle of vintage champagne, her eyes glittering with an unsettling intensity. "I know you have reservations about motherhood, Ellie," she began, her voice deceptively soft. "But I assure you, it's the most rewarding experience a woman can have." She took a sip of champagne, her gaze fixed on mine. "You'll understand once you hold your own child in your arms. All your doubts, all your fears, will melt away." I stared at her, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. There was something in her eyes, a predatory gleam that sent a chill down my spine. I realized then that this wasn't about family, about legacy. This was about control. Judith wanted to own me, to mold me into her image, to erase the independent, ambitious woman I was and replace her with a docile, obedient mother. And I had a sinking feeling that she would stop at nothing to achieve her goal. The relaxing spa weekend Judith orchestrated arrived like a poisoned chalice. I felt a growing unease, a premonition of something lurking beneath the surface of her forced generosity. The spa, nestled in the secluded mountains, was exclusive, opulent, and eerily quiet. Judith, citing a prior engagement, hadn't come, which only amplified my anxiety. "Just what you need, darling," she'd said, her hand resting a little too firmly on my arm. "A chance to unwind, to prepare for motherhood." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. The first day passed in a blur of massages, facials, and herbal teas. I tried to relax, to push the gnawing suspicion to the back of my mind, but a persistent sense of unease lingered. That night, after a light dinner, I returned to my luxurious suite. A small aromatherapy diffuser, a gift from the spa, sat on the bedside table. A handwritten note from Judith accompanied it. "Sweet dreams, darling. This blend is specifically designed for expectant mothers. Enjoy." The scent, a cloying mix of floral and herbal notes, filled the room. I felt a sudden wave of dizziness, followed by a sharp, stabbing pain in my abdomen. I doubled over, clutching my stomach, the room spinning around me. I tried to reach for the phone, but darkness closed in, swallowing me whole. I woke up in a sterile hospital room, the harsh fluorescent lights assaulting my eyes. A nurse hovered over me, her face etched with concern. "Mrs. Vance, you've had a miscarriage." "I'm so sorry." The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. Miscarriage. The baby was gone. A hollow ache settled in my chest, a gaping void where hope had once bloomed. David arrived soon after, his face pale and drawn. He held my hand, his touch cold, his eyes filled with a grief that mirrored my own. In the days that followed, Judith's solicitous concern felt like a suffocating shroud. She hovered over me, murmuring platitudes about God's will and time healing all wounds. Her presence, once a source of irritation, now felt like a physical threat. I started to see her differently, her mask of maternal concern slipping, revealing the cold, calculating woman beneath. "It's just so tragic," she'd say, her voice laced with a strange mix of sorrow and satisfaction. "But you're young, dear. You can try again. Try again." As if a child were a replaceable commodity, an accessory to be acquired and discarded. My grief was a raw, open wound, and Judith's constant presence felt like salt being poured into it. I began to question everything. The aromatherapy diffuser, the sudden dizziness, the excruciating pain. Was it just a tragic accident, or was there something more sinister at play? David, consumed by his own grief, remained oblivious to my growing suspicion. He attributed my erratic behavior to the trauma of the miscarriage, the emotional roller coaster of loss. "You need to rest, Ellie," he'd say, his voice filled with concern. "You're not yourself." But I was myself. For the first time, I was seeing clearly, the scales falling from my eyes. I saw Judith for who she truly was, a master manipulator, pulling the strings from behind the scenes, orchestrating events to suit her own twisted agenda. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that my miscarriage was no accident. One afternoon, while David was at work, I decided to investigate. I drove back to the spa, my heart pounding in my chest. I spoke to the spa manager, feigning interest in booking another stay. I casually inquired about the aromatherapy diffusers, the specific blend Judith had gifted me. The manager frowned, her brow furrowing. "We don't offer personalized blends, madam," she said, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. "All our diffusers contain the same standard blend of lavender and chamomile." My blood ran cold. Judith had lied. The diffuser she'd given me wasn't a harmless gift. It was a weapon. I left the spa, my mind racing, the pieces of the puzzle starting to fall into place. I remembered Judith's personal assistant, Ethan, a quiet, unassuming man who always seemed to be lurking in the shadows. He'd been at the spa that weekend, ostensibly to assist Judith with some errands. But now, I suspected his role was far more sinister. The world tilted on its axis. The spa's confirmation that they didn't offer personalized blends was the crack in the dam, releasing a torrent of suspicion. Judith's gift wasn't a thoughtful gesture. It was a calculated act.
But why?
What possible motive could she have for wanting me to lose the baby? The answer, chilling in its simplicity, whispered in the darkest corners of my mind. Control. I began to observe Judith with a new, hypervigilant awareness. Every word, every gesture, every seemingly innocent comment now held a hidden meaning. Her solicitous concern felt suffocating, her touch repulsive. I saw the subtle manipulations, the veiled threats disguised as gentle advice. She was a spider, weaving a web of deceit, and I was caught in its sticky embrace. "You're still grieving, dear," she'd say, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "It's perfectly normal to feel unstable. Perhaps you should see a therapist. It's important to address these emotional imbalances." Her words, meant to soothe, felt like tiny needles pricking at my sanity. She was gaslighting me, making me question my own perceptions, my own reality. Was I overreacting? Was I imagining things? Was my grief warping my judgment? The doubts, fueled by Judith's subtle manipulations, gnawed at me, eroding my confidence, my sense of self. I confided in David, hoping for support, for validation. But he, blinded by his own grief and his unwavering faith in his mother, dismissed my concerns. "Ellie, you're being paranoid," he said gently, his voice laced with concern. "Mother would never do anything to hurt you. She's just worried about you." His words, meant to comfort, felt like a betrayal. He couldn't see what I saw, couldn't grasp the insidious nature of Judith's manipulation. He was trapped in his own gilded cage, blinded by loyalty and love. My isolation deepened. I felt like I was screaming into a void, my voice lost in the echoes of Judith's carefully constructed narrative. She had painted me as unstable, as emotionally fragile, and David, along with the rest of the family, was buying into her lies. Desperate for an ally, I turned to Olivia. I told her about the aromatherapy diffuser, about Judith's lie, about my growing suspicion. To my dismay, Olivia's reaction wasn't the unwavering support I'd hoped for. She hesitated, her brow furrowed with doubt. "Are you sure about this, Ellie?" she asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "It sounds far-fetched. Judith can be difficult, yes, but I can't imagine her doing something like that." My heart sank. Even Olivia, my confidant, my sister, was doubting me. Judith's poison had seeped into every corner of my life, tainting even the closest of my relationships. "I know it sounds crazy," I pleaded, my voice trembling with desperation. "But I know what I felt, what I saw. Something's not right, Liv. You have to believe me." Olivia looked conflicted, torn between loyalty to me and the ingrained belief in Judith's inherent goodness. "I want to believe you, Ellie," she said finally, her voice soft. "But you've been through so much. Maybe you need some time to heal, to process everything." Her words, meant to be kind, felt like a dismissal. I realized then that I was truly alone in this fight. I couldn't rely on David, on Olivia, on anyone. I had to uncover the truth myself. Driven by a desperate need for answers, I started digging. I researched aromatherapy, focusing on essential oils that could induce miscarriage. I contacted the spa again, this time posing as a journalist investigating alternative therapies. I learned that certain oils, when used in high concentrations, could indeed be harmful, even dangerous. Then, I remembered Ethan, Judith's ever-present assistant. He'd been at the spa that weekend. He'd been the one who delivered the diffuser to my room. I started researching him, delving into his background, his connections. And that's when I found it. A small, seemingly insignificant detail that shattered the remaining fragments of my naivete. Ethan had a background in pharmacology. He wasn't just a harmless assistant, he was Judith's weapon. The revelation of Ethan's pharmacology background was a chilling confirmation of my suspicions. He wasn't just a harmless assistant, he was Judith's instrument, her means of enacting her twisted schemes. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place, forming a horrifying picture. Judith, desperate for a Vansair, had orchestrated my miscarriage, using Ethan's knowledge to tamper with the aromatherapy diffuser. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow, leaving me breathless, trembling with a mixture of grief, rage, and a chilling sense of purpose. My paranoia intensified, morphing into a hypervigilance that bordered on obsession. I saw Judith's machinations everywhere, in every conversation, every gesture. The world became a minefield of hidden meanings, veiled threats, and subtle manipulations. I withdrew further into myself, isolating myself from David, from Olivia, from everyone who might inadvertently betray me to Judith. David, increasingly concerned by my erratic behavior, attributed it to the lingering trauma of the miscarriage. "Ellie, you need help," he'd say, his voice filled with a mixture of love and exasperation. "You're not well. You need to see a therapist." His words, meant to express concern, felt like accusations. He wouldn't see the truth. He was trapped in Judith's web of deceit, blinded by his loyalty to his mother. One evening, while rummaging through some old boxes in the attic, I stumbled upon a stack of Olivia's artwork. Beautiful, vibrant paintings that showcased her unique talent. Tucked amongst the canvases, I found a series of bank statements addressed to Olivia, with substantial deposits from an unknown source. My heart pounded in my chest as I examined the statements more closely. The account number was linked to a shell corporation owned by Judith. The truth hit me like a tidal wave. Judith wasn't just manipulating me, she was manipulating Olivia as well. She was funding Olivia's art career, using her financial dependence as leverage to gain information about me, to control my sister, to turn her into an unwitting pawn in her twisted game. I confronted Olivia. The bank statements spread out on the table between us. Her initial reaction was denial, then confusion, then a dawning horror as the realization of Judith's betrayal washed over her. I didn't know," she stammered, her voice trembling. "She said it was a gift, an investment in my talent." "She used to live," I said, my voice laced with anger and sorrow. "She used you against me." Olivia's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Ellie," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." In that moment, the last vestiges of my isolation shattered. I had an ally, a co-conspirator in my fight against Judith. Olivia, heartbroken and enraged by Judith's betrayal, vowed to help me expose her, to bring her down. Together, we began to gather evidence, piecing together the intricate web of Judith's lies and manipulations. We uncovered emails, text messages, and financial records that exposed the extent of her machinations, the depth of her depravity. We discovered that Judith had been systematically undermining my relationship with David, planting seeds of doubt about my sanity, my fitness as a wife and mother. The weight of Judith's betrayal was crushing, but it also fueled a burning desire for revenge. The grief over my lost child transformed into a cold, hard rage, a determination to make Judith pay for what she'd done. I would dismantle her carefully constructed world, brick by gilded brick. I would expose her lies, shatter her facade, and reclaim my life. The gilded cage had held me captive for too long. It was time to break free. The annual Vance family Christmas gala was the perfect stage for my unveiling. The mansion buzzed with guests, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface of polite conversation and forced smiles. Judith, resplendent in a crimson gown, held court, the queen of her meticulously crafted kingdom. David, ever the dutiful son, played the role of the charming prince, oblivious to the rot festering at the heart of his family. Olivia and I, dressed in simple black dresses, moved through the crowd like shadows, our eyes meeting occasionally, a silent understanding passing between us. We were the ghosts at the feast, the harbingers of truth, ready to shatter the illusion of perfection. My plan was simple, yet devastatingly effective. I'd subtly planted the evidence of Judith's financial manipulation of Olivia amongst the auction items, a seemingly innocuous piece of artwork accompanied by a detailed provenance that traced the funding back to Judith's shell corporation. The revelation, timed to coincide with my own exposé, would serve as a double blow, exposing not only Judith's cruelty towards me, but also her manipulation of Olivia. As the evening progressed, I felt a strange sense of calm descend upon me. The fear, the anxiety, the crippling self-doubt that had plagued me for so long had vanished, replaced by a steely resolve. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, about reclaiming my voice, my power. The moment arrived. The auctioneer, a flamboyant man with a booming voice, presented the final item, a striking sculpture by Olivia. "This exquisite piece," he announced, his voice echoing through the ballroom, "comes with a fascinating history. The artist, a rising star in the art world, was generously funded by a mysterious benefactor." He paused for dramatic effect, holding up a framed document. "And tonight, we reveal the identity of this generous patron." A hush fell over the room. The auctioneer dramatically unveiled the document, a blown-up copy of the bank statements linking Olivia's funding to Judith's shell corporation. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, whispers turning into gasps of disbelief. Judith's carefully crafted facade began to crack. Before the shock could fully register, I stepped forward, my voice clear and steady. "I believe I can shed some light on Judith's generosity," I said, my eyes fixed on Judith's stunned face. I held up a small, unassuming object, the tampered aromatherapy diffuser from the spa. "This," I said, my voice rising, "is the reason I lost my child. This is the weapon Judith used to destroy my happiness, to control my life." The room erupted in chaos. Gasps, shouts, and whispers collided in a cacophony of disbelief and outrage. Judith, her face drained of color, stared at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fury. "You're lying," she hissed, her voice barely a whisper. "You're crazy." "Am I?" I challenged, my voice ringing with conviction. "Perhaps you should ask Ethan about the specific blend of essential oils he used to tamper with this diffuser. Oils known to induce miscarriage." I turned my gaze to Ethan, who stood frozen in the corner, his face ashen. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His silence was a deafening confession. David, his face a mask of shock and confusion, stared at his mother, then at me, his eyes darting back and forth as if trying to make sense of the unfolding drama. The truth, brutal and undeniable, was finally breaking through his carefully constructed illusion. "Mother," he said, his voice trembling, "is this true?" Judith, cornered and exposed, lashed out, her voice laced with desperation. "She's lying. She's trying to destroy us. Don't believe her." But the damage was done. The seeds of doubt had been planted, and the truth, like a relentless weed, was beginning to take root. The gilded cage, once a symbol of wealth and privilege, was now a prison, its bars closing in on Judith, trapping her in the web of her own deceit. The reign of the queen was over. The fallout from the Christmas gala was swift and brutal. The whispers, once hushed and speculative, now echoed through the halls of the Vance mansion, amplified by the shocked murmurs of the social elite. Judith's carefully constructed facade crumbled, revealing the cold, calculating woman beneath. Her reputation, once her most prized possession, lay in tatters, stained by the undeniable evidence of her cruelty and deceit. David, reeling from the revelation of his mother's betrayal, confronted her in the aftermath of the gala. The confrontation, held in the once opulent, now suffocating drawing room, was raw and visceral. "Why, Mother," he demanded, his voice thick with pain and disbelief. "Why would you do this to Ellie? To us?" Judith, stripped of her usual composure, resorted to her well-worn tactics, her voice laced with feigned innocence and wounded pride. "She's lying, David," she insisted, her eyes flashing with anger. "She's manipulating you, turning you against me." "The evidence is clear, Mother," David countered, his voice shaking with suppressed rage. "The bank statements, Ethan's confession. You can't deny it any longer." Judith's composure finally cracked. "I did it for you, David," she cried, her voice rising hysterically. "For the family." She wasn't fit to bear a Vance heir. She was going to throw it all away, your legacy, our future. "My legacy?" David repeated, his voice laced with disgust. "You call this a legacy? Lies, manipulation, and cruelty." He turned away from her, his shoulders slumped with the weight of his disillusionment. The son who had once idolized his mother now saw her for who she truly was, a woman driven by ambition and a twisted sense of entitlement. Olivia, emboldened by the truth, finally confronted Judith as well. The confrontation, unlike David's anguished questioning, was filled with a righteous fury. "You used me," Olivia spat, her voice trembling with rage. "You pretended to support my art when all you wanted was to control me, to use me against my own sister." Judith, backed into a corner, offered no defense, her silence a tacit admission of guilt. The carefully constructed walls she had built around herself, the walls of wealth, privilege, and social standing, were crumbling, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. In the days that followed, the Vance empire began to unravel. News of Judith's machinations spread like wildfire through the social circles, ostracizing her from the elite she had so desperately sought to impress. Business partners distanced themselves, investors withdrew their funds, and the Vance name, once synonymous with success and prestige, became tainted with scandal. David, heartbroken and disillusioned, moved out of the mansion, seeking solace in a small apartment across town. He needed time, he said, to process everything, to rebuild his life, brick by painful brick. I understood. We both needed time to heal, to rediscover ourselves outside the shadow of Judith's toxic influence. Olivia, freed from Judith's financial grip, threw herself into her art, finding solace and strength in her creativity. Her paintings, once vibrant and full of life, now reflected the darkness she had endured, the pain of betrayal, but also the resilience of the human spirit. As for me, I found solace in my work, returning to my role as a social worker with a renewed sense of purpose. I channeled my grief, my anger, into helping others, guiding them through the treacherous landscapes of their own lives. I saw the echoes of my own struggle in their stories, the pain of betrayal, the fight for survival. Judith, isolated and disgraced, attempted to contact David, to plead for forgiveness, to rebuild the bridges she had so carelessly burned. But David refused to engage. He had finally broken free from her grasp, and he wasn't going back. The gilded cage that had once held me captive was now empty, its doors flung open, offering a path to freedom. I had lost much, a child, a husband, a sense of security, but I had also gained something invaluable, the truth. And in the end, the truth was more precious than any gilded cage. The months that followed were a slow, arduous process of healing and rebuilding. David and I began tentatively seeing each other again, the shared trauma of Judith's betrayal forging a new, more profound connection between us. Our conversations were hesitant at first, filled with silences and unspoken anxieties, but gradually we began to talk, to truly listen to each other, to understand the pain we had both endured. We talked about the future, about the possibility of children, the dream of a family, but this time the conversation was different. It wasn't about fulfilling an obligation, a societal expectation, but about a genuine desire to build a life together. A life free from the shadow of Judith's manipulative influence. My work became my sanctuary, a place where I could channel my pain into purpose. I found a renewed sense of fulfillment in helping others navigate the complexities of their own lives, their struggles echoing my own journey of healing and resilience. I realized that the strength I had found within myself, the strength to confront Judith, to expose her lies, was a strength I could share with others. One rainy afternoon, I received a call from the nursing home where Judith now resided. She was asking for David. Her health was failing, they said, and she wanted to see him one last time. I relayed the message to David, my heart pounding in my chest. He was silent for a long moment, his face etched with a mixture of sadness and resignation. "I'll go," he said finally, his voice quiet. "Not for her, but for myself. I need to close this chapter of my life." He visited Judith the following day. I didn't ask him about the details of their conversation. Some wounds, I knew, were too deep to heal, some bridges too broken to rebuild. He returned that evening, a profound sense of peace settling over him. "She didn't apologize," he said, his voice soft, "but I didn't expect her to. I told her I forgave her, not for her sake, but for mine. I needed to let go of the anger, the resentment, to finally move on." Judith died a few weeks later, alone and forgotten. Her passing was a ripple in the vast ocean of life, barely noticed by the world she had so desperately sought to conquer. The Vance Empire, once a symbol of her ambition and ruthlessness, was dismantled, its assets liquidated, its legacy tarnished. Olivia, flourishing in her newfound freedom, held a successful exhibition of her artwork. Her paintings a testament to her resilience and her artistic vision. She dedicated the exhibition to me, a tribute to the sisterhood that had been tested but not broken. David and I, hand in hand, began to rebuild our lives. We moved out of the Vance mansion, the memories of Judith's toxic presence too heavy to bear. We found a small cottage by the sea, a place where we could breathe freely, where the air wasn't thick with expectation and unspoken resentments. One crisp autumn morning, I woke up with a familiar flutter in my stomach. I took a pregnancy test, my hands trembling as I waited for the result. 2 lines. Positive. Tears welled up in my eyes, tears of joy, of hope, of gratitude. This time it was different. This time, there was no fear, no anxiety, only the quiet anticipation of new life, a life free from the gilded cage. I told David the news that evening, watching as his face lit up with a joy that mirrored my own. We held each other close, the silence filled with unspoken promises, the weight of the past lifting, replaced by the lightness of hope. The gilded cage was gone, replaced by the vast, open sky. We were free, finally free to build our own future, a future filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a new beginning. The scars of the past remained, a reminder of the battles we had fought, the losses we had endured, but they were also a testament to our resilience, our strength, our unwavering belief in the power of love and forgiveness. And in the quiet moments, as I looked out at the endless expanse of the ocean, I knew that true freedom wasn't about escaping the cage, but about finding the strength to build your own wings.
The scent of lilies couldn't mask the stench of betrayal. I stood frozen in our bedroom, my trembling hands clutching Tom's phone. The message glared back at me, mocking my years of trust and devotion. "Can't wait to see you tonight, lover. Same place, same time." My world crumbled as I sank onto the edge of our bed, the same bed where Tom and I had shared countless intimate moments. Now it felt tainted, a symbol of his deceit. The front door creaked open downstairs. "Sarah, I'm home early." Tom's cheerful voice sent a chill down my spine. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation I never thought I'd face. "Up here," I called out, my voice surprisingly steady. His footsteps bounded up the stairs, and he appeared in the doorway, a broad smile on his face. "Hey, beautiful. I thought we could?" He froze, his eyes darting from my face to his phone in my hand. "Who is she, Tom?" I asked, my words barely above a whisper. The color drained from his face. "Sarah, I can explain." Explain what? I snapped, my composure cracking. How you've been lying to me? Sneaking around behind my back. Tom stepped forward, his hands raised in surrender. It's not what you think. She's just what? I interrupted, standing up. A friend? A colleague? Don't insult me with more lies. He ran a hand through his hair, his eyes pleading. I'm sorry, Sarah, it was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything. I echoed, my voice rising. How long has this been going on? Tom's silence was deafening. How long? I demanded. He sighed, shoulders slumping. A few months. The admission hit me like a physical blow. Months. While I'd been pouring my heart into our marriage and my business, he'd been sneaking around with another woman. I want you out, I said, surprised by the firmness in my voice. What? Sarah, please, we can work this out. Tom begged, reaching for me. I stepped back, holding up a hand. Don't touch me. I can't even look at you right now. Just go. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care, I spat. Your mother's, a hotel, wherever your mistress lives. Just get out of my sight. Tom's face crumpled. Sarah, please, I love you. It was a stupid mistake. I'll end it, I swear. I laughed bitterly. Love, you don't even know the meaning of the word. Just then, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen to see a message from Ruth, my best friend. Hey girl, still on for dinner tonight? The reminder of my plans with Ruth was like a lifeline. I needed to get out of this house, away from Tom's lies and excuses. I'm leaving, I announced, grabbing my purse. When I get back, I want you gone. Sarah, wait, Tom called after me as I stormed down the stairs. We need to talk about this. I whirled around at the bottom of the stairs, fixing him with a glare. There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice, Tom. Now you have to live with it. With that, I yanked open the front door and stepped out into the cool evening air. As I climbed into my car, I could see Tom watching from the window, his face a mask of regret and desperation. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Ruth. Everything okay? You're usually not this quiet. I took a shaky breath, realizing I'd have to tell her everything, but not over text. I needed a shoulder to cry on, a voice of reason in the chaos my life had suddenly become. As I pulled out of the driveway, leaving behind the shattered remains of my marriage, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Little did I know how right I was, or how much my world was about to change. I slammed the car door shut, my hands still shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. Ruth's worried face greeted me as I stumbled into the restaurant, my eyes puffy and red. Sarah, what on earth happened? She asked, pulling me into a tight hug. I collapsed into the booth, the words tumbling out between sobs. Tom, he's been cheating on me. Ruth's eyes widened in shock. That bastard! How did you find out? I recounted the discovery of the text message, the confrontation, and my hasty exit from the house. Ruth listened intently, her face a mix of sympathy and anger. You did the right thing, honey, she said, squeezing my hand. You deserve so much better than that lying snake. As we talked, my phone buzzed incessantly. Tom's name flashed on the screen, along with a barrage of text messages. Sarah, please come home. We need to talk. I'm sorry. I'll do anything to make this right. I love you. Don't throw away our marriage. I silenced the phone, shoving it into my purse. I can't deal with him right now. Ruth nodded. You need time to process this. Stay at my place tonight. Grateful for her support, I agreed. As we finished our meal, I felt a small surge of strength. I had my best friend, and I had my business. I could get through this. The next morning, I woke to more missed calls and messages from Tom. Steeling myself, I decided it was time to face the music. I needed to go home and figure out what to do next. As I pulled into our driveway, I noticed Tom's car was still there. Taking a deep breath, I entered the house. Tom was sitting at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. He looked up as I walked in, his eyes red-rimmed and desperate. Sarah, thank God you're home, he said, standing up. I've been worried sick. I kept my distance, crossing my arms. I'm only here to talk about what happens next. Tom's face fell. Please, Sarah. I know I messed up, but I want to make this right. I ended things with her last night. It's over, I swear. I laughed bitterly. And I'm supposed to just believe you? After months of lies? I'll do anything to prove it to you, he pleaded. Counseling, complete transparency with my phone and email, whatever you need. As much as I wanted to slam the door in his face, a small part of me hesitated. We'd been together for 10 years. Could I really throw it all away? I need time, I said finally. I can't just forgive and forget. Tom nodded eagerly. Of course, take all the time you need. I'll sleep in the guest room. Just please don't give up on us yet. I sighed, feeling the weight of the decision on my shoulders. I'm not making any promises, Tom, but I won't file for divorce. Not yet. Relief washed over his face. Thank you, Sarah. I promise I'll earn back your trust. As if on cue, my phone rang. It was a client calling about a last-minute wedding order. Despite the chaos in my personal life, my business was thriving. I have to take this, I said, stepping away from Tom. It's for the business. Tom's face clouded. Right, the business. Always the business. I ignored his comment, focusing on the call. As I discussed the details with the client, I couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. My floral designs were in high demand, and I'd built this success from the ground up. Hanging up, I turned back to Tom. I need to go to the studio. I have a big order to fill. He frowned. Can it wait? We need to talk more about us. No, it can't wait, I snapped. Unlike some people, I have responsibilities I can't just ignore. Tom flinched at my words. Sarah, Save it, I cut him off. I'll be back later. We can talk then, if I feel like it. As I walked out, leaving Tom standing helplessly in the kitchen, I felt a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Anger, hurt, confusion, but also a glimmer of something else. Determination. Whatever happened with Tom, I knew one thing for certain. I wouldn't let his betrayal destroy everything I'd worked so hard to build. I never thought I'd be packing up our life to move in with my mother-in-law, but here I was, surrounded by cardboard boxes and shattered dreams. Tom's voice echoed from downstairs as he spoke on the phone. Yes, Mom, we'll be there tomorrow. Sarah's looking forward to it too. I snorted. If he only knew how much I was dreading this move. As I taped up another box, my phone buzzed with a message from Ruth. How are you holding up, hon? Still can't believe you're going through with this. I sighed, typing back. Me neither. But Jane needs help, and Tom insists we're the only ones who can provide it. The truth was I felt trapped. Tom's affair was still a raw wound, and now I was being uprooted from my home and thrust into close quarters with his judgmental mother. It felt like a recipe for disaster. The next day, as we pulled up to Jane's sprawling Victorian house, my stomach churned with anxiety. Tom squeezed my hand, mistaking my tension for concern about his mother's health. It'll be okay, Sarah. Mom's gonna love having us here. I forced a smile, not believing a word of it. Jane greeted us at the door, her frail frame belying the sharp glint in her eyes. Well, it's about time you two showed up. I was beginning to think you'd forgotten about your poor old mother, Tom. Never, Mom, Tom said, embracing her. Sarah and I are here to help, whatever you need. Jane's gaze swept over me, her lips pursed. I suppose you'll have to do, dear, though I can't imagine how you'll manage to keep up your little flower hobby while you're here. I bristled at her dismissive tone. It's not a hobby, Jane. It's my business, and I intend to keep it running. Of course, she waved a hand. Well, come in then. No use standing around like strangers. As we settled into the guest room, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd made a terrible mistake. Jane's presence seemed to loom over everything, her disapproval palpable. Days turned into weeks, and the tension in the house grew thicker. I tried to balance my work with caring for Jane, but nothing I did seemed good enough. One afternoon, as I arranged flowers for a client in the sunroom, Jane's voice cut through my concentration. Really, Sarah, must you clutter up the whole house with your weeds? I can hardly move without tripping over a vase or a bucket. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my temper in check. I'm sorry if it's inconvenient, Jane, but this is my livelihood. I have orders to fill. She sniffed. In my day, a wife's place was in the home, not gallivanting about with flowers. I don't know how Tom puts up with it. Before I could respond, Tom walked in. Everything okay in here? Oh, Tom, Jane simpered. I was just telling Sarah how lovely it would be if she could focus more on the house. It's getting a bit neglected with all her business. I waited for Tom to defend me, to remind his mother that my business was important. Instead, he just shrugged. Maybe you could cut back a bit, Sarah? Just until Mom's feeling better? I stared at him, incredulous. Cut back? Tom, this is our main source of income right now. Or have you forgotten about your little career hiccup? Jane's eyes widened. Career hiccup? Thomas, what is she talking about? Tom shot me a panicked look. It's nothing, Mom. Just a small setback at work. Sarah's exaggerating. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Not only was he failing to support me, but he was also lying to his mother about our financial situation. I'm not exaggerating, I snapped. Tom lost his job 3 months ago. My little flower hobby is what's keeping us afloat. The room fell silent. Jane looked between us, her face a mix of shock and disappointment. Tom's expression hardened, his eyes flashing with anger. "Sarah, can I talk to you in private?" he growled. As I followed him out of the room, leaving a stunned Jane behind, I realized that the fragile peace we'd been maintaining was about to shatter. And I wasn't sure our marriage could survive the fallout. The tension in Jane's house was suffocating. After the blow-up about Tom's job loss, things had gone from bad to worse. I threw myself into my work, desperate for any escape from the constant criticism and passive-aggressive comments. One morning, as I prepared a large order for a local charity event, Jane hobbled into the kitchen, her face pinched with disapproval. "Still playing with your flowers, I see," she sniffed. "Don't you think it's time you focused on more important things? Like taking care of your husband and his poor, ailing mother?" I gritted my teeth, forcing a smile. "This is important, Jane. It's our livelihood." She waved her hand dismissively. "Nonsense. A real wife would be supporting her husband in finding a new job, not gallivanting about with roses and daisies." Before I could retort, Tom walked in, his face haggard from another night of fruitless job searching. "Mom, please," he sighed. "Sarah's business is keeping us afloat right now." Jane's eyes narrowed. "Well, if you'd put half as much effort into finding work as she does into her little hobby, maybe you wouldn't be in this situation." I watched Tom's shoulders slump, feeling a mix of sympathy and frustration. He'd been trying, but his confidence had taken a serious hit. Still, a part of me resented having to shoulder all the responsibility. "I have to go," I announced, gathering my supplies. "Big delivery today." As I headed for the door, Jane called out, "Oh, Sarah, don't forget we have bridge club this afternoon. I told the ladies you'd provide the flower arrangements." I froze, turning slowly. "Bridge club? Jane, I can't. I have 3 weddings to prep for this weekend." "Surely you can spare an hour for family," she said, her tone sickly sweet. "After all, we've opened our home to you." I looked to Tom for support, but he just shrugged helplessly. "Maybe you could squeeze it in, honey? It would mean a lot to Mom." Anger bubbled up inside me. "Fine," I snapped. "I'll be there." The day was a whirlwind of deliveries and last-minute adjustments. By the time I rushed back to Jane's house, I was exhausted and running late. I burst into the living room, arms full of hastily arranged flowers, to find Jane and her friends already deep into their game. "Oh, there you are," Jane said, her tone dripping with disapproval. "We were beginning to think you'd forgotten us entirely." I plastered on a smile, distributing the arrangements around the room. "Of course not, Jane. I wouldn't miss it." As I turned to leave, one of Jane's friends, a sharp-eyed woman named Mildred, spoke up. "Sarah, dear, why don't you join us? Surely your little flower shop can spare you for an afternoon." I opened my mouth to decline, but Jane jumped in. "What a lovely idea. Sarah, sit down. It's time you learned some proper social graces." Trapped, I sank into an empty chair, my mind racing with all the work I was falling behind on. As the afternoon dragged on, I checked my phone constantly, wincing at the mounting messages from clients and suppliers. Jane noticed, her lips pursing in disapproval. "Really, Sarah," she chided. "It's rude to be on your phone during a social gathering. I thought I taught Thomas better than to marry someone with such poor manners." Something inside me snapped. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I'm sorry, Jane, but I have a business to run. A business that's supporting this entire household right now. I can't sit here playing cards while my livelihood falls apart." The room fell silent, all eyes on me. Jane's face turned red with anger and embarrassment. "Well, I never! Thomas will hear about this disgraceful behavior." As I stormed out of the room, I caught a glimpse of Tom in the hallway, his face a mix of shock and disappointment. But I couldn't bring myself to care. I was done trying to please everyone at the expense of my own dreams and sanity. Locking myself in the guest room, I pulled out my laptop and started searching for apartments. It was time to make a decision. I couldn't keep living like this, torn between my responsibilities and my own self-respect. Something had to give. and I was determined it wouldn't be me. I stared at my laptop screen in disbelief, my heart pounding in my chest. The numbers didn't lie, but I couldn't wrap my head around what I was seeing. There was a significant withdrawal from my business account, money I hadn't touched. "Tom," I called out, my voice shaking. "Can you come here for a minute?" He appeared in the doorway, looking wary. "What's up?" I turned the screen towards him. "Can you explain this? There's $5,000 missing from the business account." Tom's face paled, and I knew instantly. My stomach dropped as he stammered. "Sarah, I can explain. You'd better start talking," I said, my voice ice cold. He ran a hand through his hair, avoiding my gaze. "I needed the money for a job opportunity. It's a sure thing, Sarah. I was going to pay it back as soon as I got my first paycheck." I felt like I'd been slapped. "You stole from my business? Without even asking me?" "I didn't steal," Tom protested. "I borrowed. It's our money, isn't it?" "No, Tom, it's not," I snapped. "It's my business account. Money I've worked hard for, while you've been sitting around feeling sorry for yourself." His face hardened. "That's not fair. I've been trying to find work." "By stealing from me?" I stood up, anger coursing through me. "What happened to the man I married? The one who supported me, who I could trust?" Before Tom could respond, Jane's voice called from downstairs. "Thomas, is everything all right up there?" Tom's eyes darted to the door. "We should continue this later," he muttered. "No," I said firmly. "We're finishing this now. Your mother doesn't get to interrupt every important conversation we have." As if on cue, Jane appeared in the doorway. "What's all the commotion about?" I turned to her, beyond caring about keeping up appearances. "Your son stole money from my business account." Jane's eyes widened, then narrowed. "Now, Sarah, I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding. Thomas would never." "He did," I cut her off, "and I want to know why." Tom looked between us, trapped. Finally, he sighed. "It's for a business venture. A friend of mine has a startup, and he offered me a position if I could invest." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So you decided to gamble with my money? Without even discussing it with me?" "It's not a gamble," Tom insisted. "John knows what he's doing. This could be my chance to get back on my feet." "John?" Jane's voice was sharp. "You don't mean John Carlson, do you?" Tom nodded, and I saw a flash of fear cross Jane's face. "Who's John Carlson?" I demanded. Jane's lips tightened. "A very bad influence from Thomas's youth. I thought we'd seen the last of him years ago." Tom's face flushed with anger. "John's changed, Mom. He's successful now." "Successful at what?" I asked, a sinking feeling in my stomach. The silence that followed was deafening. Tom couldn't meet my eyes, and Jane looked like she'd aged 10 years in a moment. "I can't believe this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You've been lying to me, stealing from me, and now you're mixed up with someone your own mother doesn't trust?" "Sarah, please," Tom pleaded. "Just give me a chance to make this right." I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized I barely recognized the man standing before me. This wasn't the Tom I'd fallen in love with, the one I'd built a life with. This was a stranger, one I couldn't trust. "I need some air," I said, grabbing my keys and phone. "Don't follow me." As I rushed down the stairs, I heard Jane's voice behind me. "Thomas, what have you done?" I slammed the front door behind me, my mind reeling. As I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, I knew I had a decision to make. Could I forgive this betrayal? Could I ever trust Tom again? My phone buzzed with a text from Ruth. "Hey girl, everything okay? You've been MIA lately." In that moment, I made my choice. I started the car and typed back, "No, nothing's okay. Can I come over? I need a friend right now." As I pulled out of the driveway, leaving behind the house that had become my prison, I felt a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't keep living like this. It was time for a change, no matter how scary it might be. I sat in Ruth's living room, my hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had long since gone cold. The past few days had been a blur of tears, anger, and sleepless nights on her couch. "Sarah, honey," Ruth said gently, "you can't avoid going back forever. You need to face Tom and figure out what you're going to do." I nodded, knowing she was right. I don't know if I can trust him anymore. The affair, the lying, stealing from my business, it's like I don't even know who he is anymore. Ruth squeezed my hand. "Then it's time to find out. Go home, confront him, and make a decision. You're stronger than you think." With Ruth's words echoing in my mind, I drove back to Jane's house. The knot in my stomach tightened as I pulled into the driveway. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car and walked to the front door. As I reached for my key, I heard voices from inside. Tom and Jane were arguing, their words muffled but their tones clear. I hesitated, then quietly let myself in, following the sound to Jane's study. "Can't keep lying to her, Thomas," Jane was saying. "Sarah deserves better than this." "I know, Mom," but Tom's voice was strained. "But if she finds out about everything, she'll leave for good. I can't lose her." I froze, my heart pounding. What more could there possibly be? Jane sighed heavily. "You should have thought of that before you got mixed up with John again. And the things you've been saying about Sarah behind her back, it's shameful, Thomas." I couldn't breathe. Tom had been talking about me? To his mother? "I was just venting," Tom protested weakly. "You know how stressed I've been with losing my job and Sarah's business taking off. Sometimes I feel like she doesn't even need me anymore." "So you tear her down to make yourself feel better?" Jane's voice was sharp. "I raised you better than that, Thomas." I'd heard enough. I pushed the door open, startling both of them. "Sarah?" Tom jumped to his feet, his face pale. How long have you been there?" "Long enough," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I think it's time we had an honest conversation, don't you?" Jane stood, smoothing her skirt. "I'll give you two some privacy." "No," I said firmly. "You should stay, Jane. I want to hear exactly what Tom's been saying about me." Tom's eyes darted between us, panic clear on his face. "Sarah, please, it's not what you think." "Then what is it, Tom?" I demanded. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been lying to me, stealing from me, and now I find out you've been bad-mouthing me to your mother. What happened to the man I married?" "I'm still that man," Tom insisted. "I've just been lost. Losing my job, watching you succeed while I failed, it's been hard. So that gives you the right to betray me?" I felt tears stinging my eyes but refused to let them fall. "To make me feel small so you can feel big?" Jane stepped forward, her face a mix of sympathy and disappointment. "Sarah, dear, Thomas has been struggling. He didn't mean—" "Don't defend him, Jane," I snapped. "For once in your life, see your son for who he really is." Tom's face hardened. "That's not fair, Sarah. You don't understand what I've been going through." "You're right, I don't," I said, "because you never talked to me. You just lied and cheated and stole." The room fell silent, the weight of everything unsaid hanging heavy between us. "I want a divorce," I said quietly, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. Tom's face crumpled. "Sarah, no, please, we can work this out. I'll do anything." "It's too late," I cut him off. "I don't recognize you anymore, Tom, and I don't like the person I'm becoming by staying in this marriage." As I turned to leave, Tom grabbed my arm. "You can't just walk away from everything we've built." I yanked my arm free, anger flaring. "Watch me." With that, I stormed out of the room, out of the house, and into the uncertainty of my future. As I drove away, tears finally falling, I realized that this wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of my new life, whatever that might look like. The world blurred around me as I drove away from Jane's house, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I couldn't go back to Ruth's. I needed space to think, to breathe. Without realizing it, I found myself pulling into the parking lot of my old studio, the place where I'd started my business before moving in with Tom's mother. I sat in the car, staring at the familiar storefront, memories flooding back. This was where I'd found my passion, my strength. How had I let it all slip away? My phone buzzed incessantly. Calls from Tom, texts from Jane. I silenced it, unable to deal with their pleas and excuses. Instead, I called my lawyer. "Sarah," she answered, "I was just about to call you. There's been a development in your case." My heart raced. "What is it?" "Tom's trying to claim half of your business assets in the divorce. He's arguing that since you were married when you started the company, he's entitled to a share." The world tilted on its axis. "He can't do that," I whispered. "That business is everything to me." "We'll fight it," she assured me, "but I need you to gather all your financial records, especially from when you started the company." As I hung up, a new determination filled me. I wouldn't let Tom take this from me, too. I unlocked the studio door, breathing in the faint scent of flowers that still lingered. This was my sanctuary, my creation, and I'd be damned if I'd let anyone destroy it. I spent hours combing through old files, piecing together the history of my business. As dawn broke, I realized I hadn't slept, but adrenaline kept me going. I was fighting for my life, the life I'd built with my own 2 hands. My phone rang again. This time it was Ruth. "Sarah, where are you? I've been worried sick." I sighed, guilt washing over me. "I'm sorry, Ruth. I'm at my old studio. I needed to think." "Well, you better come back soon. Tom's here and he's making a scene." My blood ran cold. "What? Why is he there?" "He's demanding to see you. Says he won't leave until you talk to him." I closed my eyes, exhaustion and frustration overwhelming me. "I'll be right there." The drive back to Ruth's felt like marching into battle. As I pulled up, I saw Tom pacing on the front lawn, looking disheveled and desperate. "Sarah," he called out as I got out of the car, "please just talk to me." I steeled myself, facing him. "There's nothing left to say, Tom. It's over." "You can't do this," he pleaded. "We can work it out. I'll go to counseling. I'll get a job, anything you want." "Anything I want?" I laughed bitterly. I wanted a husband who respected me, who supported me instead of tearing me down, who didn't lie and cheat and steal. Tom's face hardened. "Fine. If that's how you want to play it, I'll see you in court. You think you can just walk away with everything? You've got another thing coming." As he stormed off, Ruth appeared at my side. "Are you okay?" I nodded, a strange calm settling over me. "I am. For the first time in a long time, I know exactly what I need to do." Back inside, I called my lawyer again. "I want to countersue," I said firmly. "Tom stole money from my business account. I want to press charges for embezzlement." There was a pause on the other end. "Sarah, are you sure? This could get ugly." "I'm sure," I replied, my voice steady. "I'm done being the victim. It's time to fight back." As I hung up, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead would be hard, but I was ready. I'd lost my marriage, my home, and nearly lost myself. But I wouldn't lose my business, the one thing that was truly mine. Ruth squeezed my hand. "What now?" I took a deep breath, feeling stronger than I had in months. "Now we prepare for war. Tom wants a fight, he's got one." The courtroom felt suffocating as I sat, waiting for the judge to return with her decision. Months of legal battles, sleepless nights, and endless worry had led to this moment. Tom sat across the aisle, his face a mask of determination and barely concealed anger. As the judge entered, we all rose. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear her words at first. "In the matter of Mitchell versus Mitchell, I've reached a decision," she began. I held my breath, feeling Ruth's reassuring hand on my arm. "The court finds in favor of Mrs. Sarah Mitchell. Mr. Thomas Mitchell's claim to half of the business assets is denied. Furthermore, the court recognizes the unauthorized withdrawal of funds as embezzlement." Relief washed over me like a tidal wave. I'd won. My business, my dream, was safe. The judge continued, "Mr. Mitchell will be required to repay the embezzled funds in full and face probation for his actions." I glanced at Tom, expecting to see defeat. Instead, his eyes blazed with a fury I'd never seen before. As the court adjourned, he stormed towards me. "You've ruined everything," he hissed. "I hope you're happy, Sarah. You've destroyed our family for your precious flowers." Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the tension. "That's enough, Thomas." We both turned to see Jane standing there, her face a mix of sadness and resolve. "Mom?" Tom's anger faltered. "What are you doing here?" Jane straightened her shoulders. "I'm here to set things right." She turned to me. "Sarah, I owe you an apology. I've been blind to my son's faults for far too long. What he did to you, it's unforgivable." I stood there, stunned. This was the last thing I'd expected. "Thomas," Jane continued, her voice firm, "you need help. Real help. Not more excuses or schemes. It's time to face the consequences of your actions." Tom's face crumpled. "But Mom, No, Thomas. Enough." Jane's tone left no room for argument. She turned back to me. "Sarah, I know it doesn't make up for everything, but I want you to know I'm proud of you. You've shown incredible strength and resilience." Tears pricked my eyes. After all this time, to hear those words from Jane, it meant more than I could express. As we left the courthouse, I felt lighter than I had in years. Ruth hugged me tightly. "You did it, girl. You stood up for yourself and won." I nodded, still processing everything. "I can't believe it's really over." "Not over," Ruth corrected with a smile. "Just beginning. Now let's go celebrate your freedom and your thriving business." Weeks passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. My floral design business flourished, and I found joy in my work again. One sunny afternoon, as I arranged a stunning bouquet for a high-profile client, my phone rang. It was Jane. "Sarah," she said, her voice warm. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all," I replied, surprised but pleased to hear from her. "How are you?" "I'm well, thank you. I wanted to let you know that Thomas has entered a rehabilitation program. He's finally getting the help he needs." I felt a complex mix of emotions: relief, sadness, a touch of lingering anger. "That's good to hear, Jane. I hope it helps him." "Me too," she sighed. "And Sarah, I wanted to ask, would you be willing to meet for coffee sometime? I'd love to see your new shop and, well, to start fresh." I paused, considering. The old Sarah might have hesitated, might have clung to past hurts, but I wasn't that woman anymore. "I'd like that, Jane," I said, smiling. "How about next week?" As we said our goodbyes, I looked around my shop. My dream realized, my independence affirmed. The journey had been painful, but it led me here, to a life fully my own. I picked up a single rose from my workbench, admiring its resilience and beauty. Like this flower, I had weathered storms and emerged stronger. As I placed it in a vase, I felt a profound sense of peace. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I was excited to see what it would bring. I had faced betrayal, fought for my dreams, and reclaimed my life. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew I had the strength to face them, one petal, one day at a time.